Manhattan was literally shaking in fear. A sick roar ripped the sky open as this behemoth, like the final boss of everything, just slammed down on the planet. Every screen on Earth lit up with the same message. Yo, all Monster Hunter players get in the game or we're all toast. Total chaos. Everyone was freaking out, teams were falling apart. The entire world's fate was suddenly in the hands of a bunch of gamers. It wasn't always this insane, though. Back in 2010, it was just this epic global game called BattleNet. But then by 2022, Earth got dragged into a legit space war, forced to fight these gnarly alien creatures. And we just kept losing over and over. Now it's 2023. There are only 10 countries left, and this one monster could wipe us off the map for good. Just when it looked like the behemoth was about to wreck everything, this one dude just walks out of the smoke. Seong Jihan, ranked 7th in the world and part of the American First Guild. With a single punch, he totally one-shot the monster. Dead. Everything went dead silent. All the other players were just staring completely bug-eyed. You could hear people whispering, "Did he really just do that by himself? Is that like Marshall Saint level power?" Then a mission alert popped up in the United States. Mission complete. Up on some rooftop, Baron Williams, the #1 ranked player and leader of American First, starts bragging about the victory, calling it another win for America, and acting like he's the king of the world. Meanwhile, the priestess Sophia, who's ranked 3rd in the world, rushed over to Jihan. One of their teammates tried to warn her it was still dangerous, but Baron was like, whatever, let her go, because he knew she could handle it. Baron was just watching all this crazy energy still pouring off the behemoth's body. It was so intense that it would have knocked out most people. But Jihan, he just stood there totally unfazed. Sophia ran up and started healing his messed up arm, warning him that it was gonna hurt like crazy because of some leftover evil energy. Jihan didn't say a word, just took the pain. Then bam, a treasure chest pops up, the boss drop. Some player up high shouted about it, and of course Baron steps up telling everyone to back off. He was all, "I'll handle this." Nearby, one hunter totally scoffed, like dude's acting like he's the one who killed it. But his buddy was like, "Hey, in times like these, you kinda need a guy like that." While everyone was cheering, Baron started calling out the rewards. He named Sophia, then player 4 and player 5, and then he just stops. Sophia immediately jumped in. "Oh, what about Jihan? He's the one who killed the behemoth." Baron just pointed at Jihan and said, super cold, "He's not American. He's just a tool we used." Sophia was about to go off on him, but Jihan just cut her off. "It doesn't matter," he said, and just turned and walked away. Every step felt heavy with Baron's messed up words bouncing around in his head. He was just a refugee, a guy who'd survived when everyone else he knew didn't. Even with an insane SSR-rank skill and being 7th in the world, he never got any respect, just people treating him like dirt. But the worst part was the guilt, for being the only one left. He tried to shake it off and just focus on healing up. The mission results were about to drop. Then the system message flashed, "Game end." And the results for getting kicked out of the Bronze League were in. Only the USA and China passed the defense mission. The other 8 countries all failed. Everyone started freaking out as a new screen showed humanity's rank a pathetic 4,212. We were definitely getting demoted. Then they announced the final match. Humanity versus species number 4,773, the Orcs. Sophia's face just fell. She tried to tell Baron that the only reason they beat the Orcs last time was because of Jihan, but Baron just blew her off. This time they were going to fight without him. All of a sudden, the system activated. Players from every planet got teleported. In like a second, a whole battlefield appeared. And there we were standing face to face with the Orcs. 4,773 of them. Baron looked at his tiny team, just 4 players and 1 random ranker from China. Still, he actually thought they could win without Jihan. Firing up some red energy, he shot into the sky. He starts screaming about how he's humanity's champion, but before he could even land a hit, an orc just sliced his head clean off. It hit the ground with this nasty thud. The whole battlefield just froze. A message flashed on screen. "Humanity player dead." The orcs just charged, taking out everyone else like it was nothing. When they got to Sophia, she was shaking and begging them to spare her. The main orc just smirked and said humans were pathetic. And then he killed her in one hit. Everyone back in the US just watched, totally stunned. The system announced the game was over. Humanity ranked 4,212 lost. We were officially kicked out of the Bronze League. There was no league below Bronze. That was it. Humanity was basically labeled worthless and yeeted from the Space League entirely. As those last words disappeared, the whole world started shaking like crazy. A massive dark portals ripped open in the ground, sparking with lightning. Alarms started screaming everywhere. Deletion process started. These huge portals started popping up all over the world, and people lost their minds. Jihan just stared up at the sky, which was twisting in this super messed up way. Out of this roaring black hole, these shadowy things started reaching out. You could hear them screaming, but it was all static. Then came the final chilling message. Humanity deleted. Erased. But right before everything went dark, the system froze. "Error detected. Some humans still remain." Jihan was just floating by himself in this dark, empty void. No time, no space, just nothing. And then a tiny light appeared. Some kind of hidden power was keeping him from being deleted. His heart started pounding. He could feel this weird energy inside him, super weak but like it had potential. The system couldn't just erase him now. He felt this huge wave of regret. If only he'd figured out this power sooner. Maybe Korea would still be here. Maybe he could have saved them all. The system asked one last question. Should he get another chance? And the votes started coming in. Jihan was being sent back to the very beginning of the league. He was confused about the whole first era thing, and then this bright light just swallowed him. He woke up with his head absolutely pounding, feeling dizzy and shaky. Then he looked out the window and just froze. Seoul was alive. It was totally bustling. The sky was actually blue. His clock said it was 2020, and South Korea was still there right below him. Kids were playing outside, and he heard a couple getting hyped about logging into some new game. Jihan felt all these emotions bubbling up inside him, but then a slow smile spread across his face. He was back. He pulled up his status window and saw at level 2, the real start of the league. His expression got serious. He remembered everything, every enemy, every strategy. Betrayals, losses, so many L's. But now he had a do-over, a chance to fix it all. This time he'd save everyone, because he knew the ending. And just like that, he was back. Year 2020 and South Korea was on top of the world, crushing the global BattleNet rankings, all thanks to Yoon Sean, the Sword King. He was holding down the number 3 spot worldwide, a total legend. He was basically Korea's poster boy for power and honor. His crazy skills kept Korea dominating Northeast Asia. But then July hit and everything went sideways. Sigan completely blindsided the nation, ditching the team to join some new self-defense force. Team Korea was a mess. It was like the biggest gut punch the whole community had ever taken. Then on live TV, Sigan dropped the ultimate bombshell. He changed his name to Ryu Hai and became a Japanese citizen, going by Itoruhi now. As Jihan watched the whole thing go down, Jihan's hands balled into fists, pure rage boiling up as he stared at the screen. After Sigan bailed, Korea totally spiraled. The headlines were insane. Sword King ditches homeland. Fear was everywhere as the country's top rank just fell apart. He could only watch as the team's ranking tanked tier after tier, just losing like crazy. The commentators on TV tried to spin it, saying the new kids could keep Korea in the top 20. But Jihan knew the real deal. Nobody was stepping up, the clock was ticking, and they were destined to fail. BattleNet didn't play around. Then a system alert rocked the whole country. The Space League was on. What everyone thought was just a game turned out to be lethal. 2 years later, the terrifying truth dropped. If you die in the game, you die for real. And countries that bombed in the rankings, they got invaded by actual monsters. Korea, after Sigan's betrayal, was one of the first to fall. Whole cities were just gone. All the survivors said the same thing: if the Sword King had just stayed, things might have been different. For Jihan, this was super personal. Sigan wasn't just some hero. He was family. His own brother-in-law. He was so mad he literally smashed Sigan's picture, his mind racing with questions. How could his sister have loved that guy? Could he have saved her, saved his country? But now he was back in time. Jihan pulled up his stats. Pathetic, just like the first time around. He'd totally wasted his life once, but not again. A system window popped up. Classless. Gift Wanderer's Eyes. It was a trash tier rank F that just let him peep other players' info. When you turned 18, everyone got to be a player, but only the lucky few got gifts. Jihan's rank F gift seemed lame, so he just used it to bet on fights, totally clueless about his real potential. The kind that would only unlock after a full sync. His stats said he was level 1, but he remembered being level 2. Then it clicked. He'd accidentally chugged an EXP potion once when he was drunk and leveled up. Such a stupid mistake. All of a sudden, a system notification popped up. 100,000 achievement points. He was floored. He hadn't done anything epic before the league started. Was this a reward for time traveling? He checked his inventory, and a new item was there. An achievement points exchange coupon. It said it was a reward for the last survivor who dared to challenge again. It was a crazy X-rank perk, basically, with his name on it. He used it, and another system alert flashed. Achievement store unlocked. Jihan couldn't help but grin. This was his shot. The store was pretty basic, so he took a gamble and upgraded it. Level 2 got him an inventory expansion. Lame. So he tried again. Level 3, nickname unlocked. Still not what he needed. With 50,000 points left, he went all in with 40,000. Level 4, urgent restoration unlocked. His eyes lit up. This was it. He could fix any broken item and make it perfect. He felt that old familiar rush. The same high that fueled his gambling addiction, but this time, it felt like fate. He walked into Sigan's old game room. The system scanned his fingerprint. Family member confirmed, Jihan smirked. Heh, even the machine thinks I'm still part of the family. The BattleNet connector opened up. His first key got him a broken item, Dongfang Shu's spoiled brush. He immediately used urgent restoration. The system fixed it instantly. And now he was holding Dongfang Shu's brush, an insane SS-rank item once used by a sage who chilled with the high martial god. Then a system alert. Gangnam Bronze League tutorial begins in 10 seconds. Jihan pulled up his stats. Using the brush, he literally rewrote them, mashing his strength, agility, and vitality into one stat martial power. This was the secret to how he became the rank 7 martial saint in his past life. The characters on the screen started glowing. Time's up. The world around him just warped. A notification flashed. Player Seong Jihan has entered the BattleNet League. Mission survive. Fight in the Coliseum until only 50 are left standing. Jihan just stood there soaking it all in. His stats were totally different. Strength, agility, and AP were all gone, replaced by a single rare stat, martial power. Unique stat acquired. 10,000 achievement points earned. The system confirmed it. He let out a slow breath. Okay, step 1 complete. With martial power, the Bronze League was going to be a cakewalk. His real target was the nameless divine art. Another alert popped up. Logged in without BattleNet connector. Pain synchronization set to 100%. Crap. He remembered you could lower the pain. Sigan's old device cut it by 99%. He had to find that thing. Then out of nowhere, a new quest appeared. Reach rank 1 in the tutorial. Reward 1,000 points. This quest was totally new, but he just smiled. With his martial power, it was totally doable. The game started. Survive, the system ordered. Some dude charged at him with a sword, but Jihan just casually caught the blade between 2 fingers. The attacker completely froze, shook. Jihan smirked. Thanks for being my first kill. Because for him, nothing got his blood pumping more than a total beatdown. Right before the game kicked off, a look into the BattleNet world showed guilds popping up everywhere. These were basically crews built to train and handle the top-tier players. As the game blew up worldwide, every country was scrambling to create their own champs. In South Korea, big-shot corporate guilds like Ta Turtle were leading the pack, racking up early wins with smart plays and brutal training. The Gangnam Bronze League quickly turned into the main stage for all the rising stars, where fresh talent from all these guilds made their big debut. And just then the system announced the match was starting. Like all eyes suddenly snapped to this familiar dude, the same guy who jumped Jihan before. Standing all by himself, he took a deep breath. The Gang League was no joke, but he steeled himself. This was his shot. With this quiet determination and some serious confidence, he felt like luck was totally on his side, and he was about to blow up. His name was Hyakyu, a rising star from the elite Divergent Guild who'd awakened the super rare A-rank agility gift, a talent almost no one had. A lot of people thought he had the juice to make it into the top 50. On the battlefield, it was pure chaos. Players from major guilds were clashing hard, decked out in the best gear. Hyakyu smartly hung back, knowing one screw-up could get him deleted. This wasn't the Bronze League, not even close. This felt way more dangerous. Then he saw someone who looked totally out of place, Jihan, wearing just sweatpants and a tank top. The guy looked clueless, like some noob who accidentally got dropped into a pro lobby. Hyakyu smirked. A free kill, he thought, and lunged in for an easy point. But right as his blade was about to hit Jihan, something impossible went down. Jihan just calmly lifted his hand and stopped the sword cold with 2 fingers. Time basically froze. Hyakyu was floored. How could anyone just catch a blade swung with A-rank agility before he could even react? Jihan snatched the sword, tossed it back, and knocked him completely off balance. With a sharp diss, Jihan clowned his gift, asking how someone like him even ended up in the Gangnam Bronze League. Hyakyu's pride just shattered. He was seeing red. He screamed that A-rank agility wasn't a joke, that gifts like his weren't trash. But Jihan didn't even bite. He just didn't care. That complete indifference is what really set Hyakyu off. Who was this broke-looking guy to look down on him after blocking one measly strike? Totally enraged, Hyakyu unleashed his full power, a blue aura flaring as he charged in. Jihan just stood there, his eyes sharp. He could feel it, Hyakyu's insane speed, but he also felt how sluggish he was. Getting reset to level 2 had nerfed him more than he expected. In his prime, this would have been over in a flash. Still, his instincts were razor sharp. Hyakyu's moves were super obvious, like he was telegraphing every single one. When Hyakyu tried a sneak attack from behind, Jihan calmly deflected the sword up, caught it out of the air, and pressed it to his opponent's neck, ending the fight in one smooth move. Hyakyu froze, completely shook, his confidence wrecked. This can't be real, he muttered as his body started to glitch out, before he just vanished. He swore he'd beat Jihan next time. Jihan just raised an eyebrow. Dude's talking about a rematch when he's literally getting deleted. What a trip. As Hyakyu faded into a cloud of particles, his sword disappeared too. A system message popped up. First kill achieved. Plus 100 achievement points. Jihan stood there thinking. So weapons just despawn with the player. What a waste. Jihan scanned the chaotic arena, his body now totally warmed up. To take first place, he needed at least 5 more kills. Most players ignored the monsters. In this battle, taking one out only gives you 0.1 points, so you'd need 10 monsters for a single score. Players would rather just hunt each other instead. The air was filled with the sound of clashing weapons. Chasing mob monsters like Orcs was seen as a total waste of time. Way too dangerous for such a tiny reward. Suddenly, Jihan's quest window flashed. A new mission just dropped: annihilate the Orc mob. Kiku saw it too, totally confused. This wasn't just some random group. It was the strongest monster unit in the entire Coliseum. Jihan saw the Orcs, a deadly organized crew. But the reward of 500 achievement points was way too good to pass up. Hunting monsters was usually risky and slow, but 500 points was 5 times more than what he got for the first kill. That made it worth the danger. Grinning like a maniac, Jihan charged right at them. The Orcs just laughed, mocking this half-naked unarmed guy who had the nerve to attack. One of them hurled an axe, but Jihan caught it with one hand, his eyes sharp and kinda amused. Using their own axe, he rushed in and quickly ended 5 of them. Blood sprayed as the orcs went down. The others roared in fury, closing in on him. His status confirmed it. 5 down, 25 to go. The monsters were all bunched up, furious and dead set on taking Jihan out. They charged like wild animals, but he stayed cool, effortlessly breaking their weapons one by one. Shocked and enraged, they screamed even louder, but Jihan's strikes just kept shattering their arms again and again, leaving them confused and losing all hope. With a cold sneer, Jihan dissed their pathetic ambush. He grabbed a broken axe, stepped forward, and faced a freaked-out monster. Their weapons clashed, and the monster's axe shattered on impact. Jihan scoffed at their weak sauce gear, clowning on how such huge creatures were carrying such flimsy weapons. The monsters whispered to each other in shock. Jihan's weapon was broken too. Fueled by pure rage, they all charged together to finish him. But Jihan stayed completely calm. With a powerful stomp, the ground cracked under them, throwing them all off balance. In that 1 second, he drew his sword and struck with lightning speed, cutting down a bunch of monsters before they could even react. One monster, frozen in disbelief, called Jihan a monster himself. Without a second thought, Jihan ended him too. All of a sudden, a status window popped up. He'd cleared the quest, earning 500 achievement points and a level up. Surprised by the mid-game level up, Jihan figured it was probably because his level was so low. Smiling, he jumped on the chance to upgrade his stats. Jihan's status window showed martial power at 5 mana at 1 and 1 unused stat point. His class was martial class, and his gift, the Wanderer's Eye, was rank F, which let him check out other players' skills. His nickname was still empty. He knew martial power was special. It rolls strength, agility, and stamina all into one, basically doubling your physical abilities compared to other stats. Hitting 30 would unlock a secret path to the legendary unnamed divine arts, but improving it was a serious grind, needing tons of intense combat and strict training. Stat points only raised the growth limit, but the stat itself. So when Jihan saw his martial power already going up, he was totally floored. This was not supposed to pop off this fast. Usually it took weeks, even months. A small smirk crept onto his face. If this kept up, he was definitely on the right track. An arrow suddenly zipped toward Jihan, but he dodged it on pure instinct. He whipped around and saw a female archer and a male warrior rolling up on him. The archer gave him props for the dodge, but the warrior just shrugged it off like it was dumb luck. The archer was like, "Let's finish this quick." The match was almost over. The warrior reminded her about their deal. Whoever got the final hit would snag the reward. Jihan quickly scoped them out. They were obviously a team, a classic move in survival maps. He spotted the Turtle Guild logo on the warrior's armor, and knew their coordination was probably on point. A solid mix of close-range and long-range fighters from a top-tier guild. His status window lit up. Only 60 players left, and the tutorial was ending any minute. A ton of people had already been wiped. Jihan figured just dodging might be enough to make it through, but these two were gunning for him. They thought he was an easy target. The warrior casually offered the archer a deal. Dinner if she let him take the final blow. She shot him down hard. Meanwhile, Jihan checked the scoreboard. 4 eliminations, barely hanging on to first place, and he was determined to keep it that way. The archer started dissing him, calling him young and reckless. Before she could even finish, Jihan moved like a blur, his sword right at her throat, and in one clean motion she was out of the game. Jihan stared at his glowing status window. His martial power had hit 6. Pumped, he whispered that now was the perfect time to really test out his new strength. Only 58 players were left, and the clock was ticking. The lone warrior watched, totally panicked, demanding how Jihan had just deleted her so easily. Without saying a word, Jihan moved in, sword at the ready. Jihan's blades slammed into the warrior's B-rank Turtle Guild armor, but it barely even scuffed it. The warrior smirked, all cocky, because he thought his armor made him untouchable. Unfazed, Jihan just tightened his grip and kept wailing on the same weak spot over and over. Slowly, the metal started to bend and crack, a hole forming under his non-stop assault. The warrior's smirk completely vanished, replaced by pure terror as he screamed at Jihan for being insane. But Jihan just sneered, clowning on the guy's pride and his flashy armor. "Armor doesn't mean a thing if you can't take a real hit," he said, ice cold, pressing his attack with zero chill. Far away from the fight inside a super high-tech control room, the Divergent Guild was watching Jihan's battle on a humongous screen. Lee Hyen, head of HR for the 3rd Division, sat there seriously impressed next to her bodyguard Lim Gae. Hyen remarked that Jihan's skills were way beyond what they expected, and was super relieved Gae hadn't been sent in to fight him, or she might have gotten knocked out early. Gae had to agree that Jihan was a major threat and suggested they just steer clear of him next time. But Hyen wasn't having it. Her pride wouldn't let her back down. She ordered Gae on to go head-to-head with Jihan and take him down if they ever crossed paths again, stressing how crucial the fight was for their rankings and data. Gae bowed quietly, muttering Jihan's name. It felt familiar. She was almost positive she'd seen him before, but the memory just wasn't clicking into place. The Divergent Guild was famous for its elite players, and Lim Gaeyong was their total rockstar and S-rank gift holder who was supposed to be a lock for first place. She crushed every match with perfect strategy and skill, looking completely unbeatable. But But everything flipped when Seong Jihan shot up out of nowhere and snatched the top spot, bumping Lim Gayong down to second. Meanwhile, over in the Turtle Guild's scout team, everyone was completely shook as they stared at the wild leaderboard. One of the members just couldn't believe his eyes. Seong Jihan was ranked number 1 at just level 2, with 0 gear, no guild, and no squad. He'd even started late, rocking only sweatpants and a basic weapon, yet somehow he'd already racked up 6 eliminations. Like, how was that even possible? Who even was this Seong Jihan guy? Cut to Jihan just chilling on his couch, calmly looking at his status window. A system alert popped up. He'd snagged first place in the tutorial, earning a 50% experience boost, and jumping up 3 whole levels. Jihan smiled, pretty stoked with how fast he was leveling up even as a total newbie. A system notification reminded him the tutorial didn't give out any GP, but he was already thinking ahead. He dumped all his leftover stat points right into martial power, going all in on strength. Instantly, his level rocketed from 6 to 9. With that, he also copped a new title, Tutorial Conqueror, for his insane performance. Curious, he checked out what it did. The title gave him a +1 to all his stats in the Bronze League. But it also nerfed his XP gain by 20%. Jihan wasn't tripping, though. The stat boost would give him a serious edge in every single fight. Now that he was buffed all around, he gave his updated profile a once-over level stats, title, rank, and achievements. Everything looked good, and he was ready for his next move. Jihan reviewed his build. 10 points in martial power meant he could pretty much breeze through most of the Bronze League challenges. The promotion to Silver was locked until level 25, so it was all about that steady grind. But now it was time for the big choice, his official class: Warrior, Archer, Mage, or Support. In his past life, he'd picked Warrior. Super strong, super reliable. But this time, things were going to be different. Thanks to the hidden achievement store, he could just buy the Warrior class later for 10,000 points, which totally freed him up from his old limitations. Feeling confident and totally unbound, Jihan made his choice. All of a sudden, the calm game world just exploded into chaos. The creepy screams of zombies filled the air, their freaky forms surging forward in a massive, unstoppable wave. A system notification popped up. The mission was defense. Protect the crystal no matter what. With hordes of undead swarming in, the only goal was to survive until just 5 towers were left standing. All right, the battle was on, and it was a total game changer for Seong Jihan. Then boom, Lim Gayan pops up, swarmed by these seriously gross zombies. Even for a game, this horde of undead was giving me major creeps. 2 other players joined her. One was already complaining about the map, and the other was like, yep, it's a defense mission. Gayong quickly sized up the crew: an archer from the LK group, rocking B-grade gear, and a mage who was totally stacked with high-end equipment but had no guild. Their loadout was pretty solid for this part of the game. Still, Gayong knew the key player wasn't the archer or the mage, it was the support. Defense missions are all about teamwork and just hanging in there, and the support's role was going to be clutch for surviving the long haul. A crazy bright light suddenly blasted down from above, making Gayong cover her eyes. When the light faded, Seong Jihan was just standing there with them. Gayong was shook. For real? Was that really him? Super chill, Jihan confirmed their mission was defense. Then rewind to like 20 minutes ago. Jihan's status window was flashing a warning that his support class pick was a bad match, asking him to confirm it again. But he picked it in a heartbeat, not for some big brain strategy, but for his own reasons. The support class unlocked a super rare power called Divine Power, which he totally needed to level up a unique stat that was critical for his future. This was a stat you couldn't just grind up normally. Only rare stat points or some secret hack could boost it, and Jihan wasn't about to waste his precious points. He knew a secret guaranteed way that almost nobody else did. Anyway, back to the present. Gayong was just staring at Jihan, completely baffled. He picked support. A nearby mage scoffed and started laughing at him before getting seriously ticked off. How did they get stuck with a guy like Jihan? His worn-out clothes looked like a total joke next to the mage's expensive setup. The mage completely blew up, cussing him out and screaming that he'd wasted his premium gear on a worthless teammate. He refused to keep going and started dissing Jihan hard, calling him filthy and saying the mission was a total loss without him. The archer tried to calm him down, but the mage just stormed off, ditching the team. Gayong just sighed. With a troll like that, this mission was about to get way harder than it needed to be. What happened next left everyone speechless. Without saying a word, Jihan grabbed the mage by the neck and just lifted him off the ground like it was nothing. The mage started freaking out, yelling to be let go. Jihan, cold as ice, let go, but instead of putting him down, he straight up yeeted the mage off the castle wall into the swarm of hungry zombies below. The undead mob ripped the guy to shreds instantly. Jihan calmly turned back and said anyone who wasn't down to play could leave. The rest of them would handle it. The archer and Gayong were just frozen, completely stunned by what they just saw. The mage respawned and came back to the battlefield, dropping to his knees and shaking. He swore he'd do his best. He'd had enough of dying and was not doing it again. It was Kim Yuduk. He'd already died twice in the Bronze League's defense game, where every player only gets 3 lives. One more death meant game over for him with a brutal penalty, losing levels and crazy expensive skills. Jihan looked down at him and asked what he was talking about. Panicking Kim promised to work way harder. Jihan smirked at how fast he changed his attitude and dared him to try throwing fire spells again. Nervously, Kim agreed, reminding everyone that as a level 15 fire mage, he was still a huge help against mobs. Gaeyoung recognized him right away. Kim Yuduk, who used to be a big deal in one of the 10 great guilds, but after failing the Silver Promotion Leagues 4 times, he totally lost it and just became a bitter troll. Back on the battlefield, the mage said he'd only cooperate on one condition: an apology from Jihan. The archer tried to chill things out, telling them to make peace, but Yuduk was still seething, cursing Jihan under his breath. Without any warning, Jihan grabbed him by the collar, his voice sharp and cold. If Yuduk wanted an apology, he'd have to earn it. Before the mage could even react, Jihan slammed him down and hit him hard with his weapon. Jihan reminded him that Yuduk was the one who started this mess, so why should he apologize? He told the mage to just go die, and if he came back, to bring a clue with him. A system window popped up. The mage was dead. Gaeyoung and the archer were floored. None of them thought Jihan would actually kill the mage. The archer, totally confused, just stared at him in disbelief. Meanwhile, zombies started climbing the castle walls. On the other side, the enemy fire mage was throwing out waves of fire, holding them back easily. His teammates were hyping him up, even joking about roasting marshmallows. Hearing that, Jihan's teammate repeated the joke, then sighed. "This is exactly why we needed a mage," he muttered. "We're totally screwed without one." He was mad at himself for not teaming with a mage and blamed Jihan's ego for their mess. But Jihan said nothing. Instead, he opened his status window. A new quest appeared. Kill 1,000 zombies solo. The reward was 3,000 achievement points. Jihan saw the number. 1,000 zombies all by himself. It seemed impossible with so little time left, but the points were way too good to pass up. Lim Gaeyoung watched him, judging him hard. He ignored strategy, acted on his own, and chose a support class even with his crazy stats. Even noobs avoided making such reckless moves. She wondered why the Divergent Guild even recruited him. The archer, furious, yelled at Jihan to stop ignoring him, or just fight by himself. Jihan stopped and asked if fighting alone was actually an option. The archer was confused. Jihan was thinking if he could just pull the zombies away, maybe he could handle them all by himself. Gaeyoung stepped up, offering to lead, and told Jihan to get behind her. Even if they were going to lose, she wanted to take charge. But Jihan calmly stopped her. He was like, "I got the front, you cover the archer." Then out of nowhere, this freaky zombie starts climbing up. Its head was all gooey and liquid-like. The archer totally freaked, yelling that regular hits were useless against this thing. But Jihan just strolled up all confident and smacked this gross flying zombie right out of the air. Mana sparks went off like fireworks, and the archer and Gaeyoung were just staring, totally speechless. She knew that power. A super rare white sacred flame, maybe even legit divine. Then a whole new wave of zombies charged in, growling like crazy. Jihan just zipped through one, taking its head clean off with this glowing mana trail. The whole thing seemed impossible. I mean, taking out 1,000 zombies, but Jihan was so ready to go for it. A system notification popped up: 6 out of 1,000 zombies handled. So Jihan just charged in, slicing up zombies with insane precision. 12 KOs, then 19, then 26. Normal hits weren't even tickling the gnarly ones, so he unleashed his divine power, nailing one right in the head. From the sidelines, a teammate was watching with his jaw on the floor, realizing he totally misjudged Jihan. That quiet vibe was just hiding some serious strength. Gaeyoung, watching from a distance, was just as blown away. Jihan was using divine power mid-fight like it was nothing, with deadly accuracy, always going for the headshot. Then boom, a system alert. He'd met some special condition. His divine power leveled up from 6 to 7 and his weapon started to glow. He got this little smirk on his face, fixed his grip, feeling stronger and more confident than ever. Back in 2010, divine items were like these holy grail treasures, selling for crazy money because of all the rumors. But like a decade later, none of those secrets ever came out, especially for the non-combat stuff, and their price totally tanked. Most people didn't even know things like that were real. Then not too long ago, this girl Sophia, a priestess from the American First Guild, just casually dropped that she'd been leveling up her divine power with one of those forgotten items. Curious Jen asked how. She explained the item was from a guild branch, and it only worked when she was training. She just had to hold it and pray, and over time she soaked up all this divine power. That's literally how she became a priestess. The technique was different for each item, but it totally worked. Jihan pushed his hair back, still shook that nobody had figured out this power-up cheat code. Sophie just shrugged it off. She said there were rumors, but finding divine items was basically impossible. She totally cashed in during the training era, even though she tried to play it cool, saying she didn't hog them all. Still, Jihan knew this was some super secret info that only one other person she kept talking about knew. Later on, Jihan got back to that Sword King's penthouse and found this room just packed with divine items, all of them dead and powerless. The system even confirmed they were turned off. He knew there was only one person who could have collected all of these. His late sister Sanjia, who used to be Korea's #1 support, right up there with Yoon Sain. As he was quietly getting dressed, he spotted this steel staff. He knew an E-rank divine artifact his sister used. It was originally for priests to keep cultists in line, which made it pretty much perfect for wrecking zombies. Now in the middle of his next fight, the system lit up again. The staff's rank had leveled up, letting him soak up even more divine power. It just felt so right in his hands. From a distance, Gaeon was watching Jihan with this intense look. His power was impressive, sure, but his perfect control in the fight was what really blew her mind. Nearby, the archer Namjoon Seo pointed super hyped at the horizon. The tower was down. Their crew was now in the top 5. He was like, should we go join the main fight? Then all of a sudden a zombie jumped them, without even blinking. Gaeyoung zipped forward and took it down with these quick, clean slashes. Jihan turned totally surprised. He recognized those moves. The Plum Blossom Sword. That's Gaeyoung. It all clicked. She was actually the Sword King for a little while. A total legend, but her story had a tragic ending. Raya was the one who took her out. Gaeyoung, the same girl Jihan had saved before, called out to him asking if he wanted their help. She said together they could totally climb the leaderboard. He glanced at the status window, 5th place, 398 KOs and 1 hour and 28 minutes to go. He knew Gaeyoung could handle it, so he told them to keep going. The rest was all them. And then, without even thinking twice, Jihan just jumped off the tower. His teammates were staring completely shocked as he fell. Midair, he clutched his weapon, pumping it full of energy. He was so ready, baiting all the undead so he could wipe them out in one go. The archer screamed, totally stunned. They hit first place. Jihan's final move completely wrecked the tower, and the system confirmed it. Their team was the only one left. Mission complete. Out of 1,000 zombies, Jihan personally took down 560 of them. He shot right to the top, all thanks to the system. Gunso was cheering his head off, saying Jihan's performance was insane. Jihan just gave a little nod. He'd leveled up big time, so the risk was totally worth it. The archer was laughing, calling Jihan the GOAT, and thanking him for carrying him this far. Jihan knew he'd probably never see this mission or weapon again, so he just casually threw out that they should team up again. From up high, Gaeyoung was just staring, not believing what she saw. How could a low-level support player do all that by himself? It had to be a glitch in the system or something. The archer lit up, and then poof, he was gone. But Gaeyoung was still frozen, trying to process what just happened. Just as Jihan was about to bounce and get his reward, Gaeyoung called his name. He gave her a look, totally puzzled. He didn't remember ever meeting the famous Plum Blossom Sword. But Jaeon had already made up her mind a guy like Jihan with that much power and rep was someone you couldn't just ignore. Speaking for the Divergent Guild, she got all nervous and asked for his number, but then immediately realized her mistake. Like she hadn't even said who she was. All flustered, she started explaining she wanted to recruit him. But before she could even finish, Jihan politely shut her down, saying he couldn't remember his number. Gaeyoung just blinked, totally surprised. Jihan was like, I'll catch you next time, and then just vanished from the tower. Gaeyoung was just left there, completely confused. She totally thought I ghosted her. Meanwhile, I'm walking off realizing I legit don't even know my Korean number, just my United States one. Still, I had to chuckle at how awkward that was. Man, maybe I should have just asked for her number instead. Joining a guild isn't even on my radar right now. Gotta level up king first. I checked my stats, 1 level up and 1,500 gear points. Not too shabby. Especially since my divine power got a boost too. Curious, I opened the gear shop. An alien weapon, a sick hammer, and some gloves caught my eye, but they all cost 3,000 points. Way too expensive. Back in 2020, things were so much cheaper. Not wasting any time, I headed home, hoping I could find some usable gear in my sister's closet. In the elevator, I hit my floor, totally focused. But as the apartment door opened, I froze. There was a pair of shoes in the hallway that made my heart just stop. The groceries slipped right out of my hands as the memories hit me like a truck. Regrets from a life I already failed. This was one of my absolute deepest regrets. With a shaking hand, I stepped inside. And there she was, my niece Sia, alive. She just casually asked about my hangover, having no idea about the storm raging inside me. I could barely even speak. I had waited so long for this moment just to see her again. In my past life, I was just this broken guy on the couch, bottle in my hand, while she so bright and strong promised she'd protect me. Her smile and her words used to light up my messed up world, and she for real kept her promise. She always told me to believe in her, and I did. Now with this crushing regret, I apologized in my head for failing her. I missed her more than I can even say. Her voice cut through my thoughts again. With a soft smile, she told me to go wash my hands. Sia, Jihan's niece, his sister's daughter, had just turned 18. When I asked if her sleepover was over, she laughed, saying she bounced early. I basically helped raise her since she was born, becoming her only real family after I lost mine. Now she was saying it was just the two of them at home. I muttered her name, so frustrated, and asked if she'd talked to her dad. She hesitated, then dropped the bombshell about their call. Her father had fallen in love, and said everything was about to change. He wasn't even asking her to understand. The woman he loved didn't want Sia around, and he just agreed to leave her. Like, seriously. Sia asked how he could pick some girl over his own daughter, but he just ignored her and hung up. I was silently cursing that dude out. He'd always been selfish, just chasing women and ditching his responsibilities. Then Sia pointed at his smashed portrait. Did you break that? I nodded, telling her I lost my temper. But still I added, he's your father. Then why did you break it? She asked again, clenching her fist and forcing a smile. She said she wanted to break it herself and swore she was fine. I knew her so well. After her mom's death and her dad's betrayal, she always smiled and cared more about everyone else than herself. But she didn't have to anymore. I gently put a hand on her head and pulled her into a hug. She was an adult now, strong enough to even take care of me. Startled Sia buried her face in my chest as I promised to protect her. She didn't have to push herself so hard anymore. With a peaceful smile, she teased that I smelled like sweat. Meanwhile, over at Gangnam's Divergent Guild, Han was laughing behind her hand, while Gayong told her to just let it out. Han called me adorable, totally ragging on Gayong for getting rejected after asking for a number. And the guy didn't even remember it. Gayong basically gave up saying she didn't have her boss's cool vibe and looked more like a dude. Han realized that was the real problem. Gayong had no idea how popular she was. As they walked, other guild members were glancing their way. One guy quietly wondered if he should shoot his shot with the plum blossom sword Gayong. His friend warned him he'd get sliced in half. Han just waved it off, telling Gayong to ask other people what they think. They'd convince her. They went into the break room where Han kicked back with a drink. Gayong asked about recruiting Jihan. Han was surprised. There was no plan, just a ton of pressure from the elders to decide like now. Gayong insisted Jihan was too talented to let go. Suddenly Han's phone buzzed. Jihan had gone live. No battles today, just a stream. Gayong teased Han about watching gambling streams, but Han defended it, calling it strategy analysis. Then Han's eyes went wide. Jihan appeared on screen looking right at the camera, asking if the stream was working. You could hear Sia say everything was visible on the phone. Gayong stared at her boss in total disbelief. Was she for real watching his stream? Han tried to play it cool, but she was so busted. On screen, Jihan boldly declared he was the Sword King's son-in-law. The comments were stunned. Could it actually be true? The twin sword statue behind him proved he was on the restricted Sword Palace rooftop, a place only accessible to Sedan family members. Jihan told Sia to step back, and she did. The chat absolutely exploded with debates about Sedan. Then Jihan focused energy in his legs, stunning everyone. All of a sudden, he slammed his foot down, sending literal shockwaves through the ground. The whole stream gasped. He followed up with a crazy powerful punch, striking the sword statue. Reactions were flooding the stream. Likes, dislikes, and viewers were skyrocketing. The system confirmed his achievement. Jihan's jacket was torn from the energy blast, and he smiled, totally ready to reveal the truth about Sajun's citizenship. Battle 2. The top live streaming platform on BattleNet had totally changed the game with achievement rewards, viewers, and engagement, which now directly boosted a player's success. For Jihan, who boldly claimed to be the Sword King's son-in-law, it was the perfect stage to snatch every single prize. As achievements popped up and viewers surged, one notification stood out over 100. Like 0 dislikes. The commentators were totally bugging, wondering if Jihan really just wrecked the legendary twin sword statue. But Jihan, he was chilling, totally unfazed, because he knew the hate was coming. And of course there was this one super intense critic leading the charge. A total Sword King stan who was losing it that Jihan trashed a national symbol. The fan was freaking out that the Sword King might be gone for good. It was giving major Crazy Sage fan club energy for real. All his stans who used to be so loyal totally flipped out when Sage dipped. They started pointing fingers at Sia, his rebellious daughter, thinking if they made her pay, their hero would come back. The public needed a villain, and Sia got cast in the role. Taking a deep breath, Jihan faced the livestream, basically ready to take all their hate himself. To really hammer it home, he smashed the broken statue again, even with the commentators freaking out, and announced, "Your idol Ryuhi isn't coming back." Then he held up his phone and played this secret recording of Ryuhi admitting to his own daughter that he was bouncing for love, even if that meant straight up ditching her. It was the price he'd pay to be with the woman he loved. The chat went absolutely nuclear. Some people screamed slander. Others called it fake. Then Sia stepped into the frame, her hand on her chest. She admitted she was totally heartbroken, but said she couldn't accept a thing from a guy who bailed on his country and his own family. He left her the Sword Palace, but she was donating the whole thing to the nation. Viewers were literally shook. Some thought she was out of her mind, but she explained she wanted the property to help out other Korean players, and promised she'd spill more details soon. But get this, just 30 minutes earlier she was floored when Jihan even brought up the idea. She literally pinched his cheek, thinking he had to be drunk. Jihan winced, promising her he was being for real. With her hands folded, she asked why he'd just give it all away. But Jihan answered with this crazy clear focus. He honestly wasn't sure he could get her on board. I mean, donating a house that valuable is a huge deal, but he felt like he had no other choice. He had to protect Sia. See, in the original timeline, Sia basically destroyed Korea. The public went wild and all her stuff got taken away. Sia, with everyone hating on her and nowhere to go, ended up taking her own life. To stop that future, Jihan decided they had to give up the house on their own terms. It's not like he could just explain he was from the future. To her, he was still just a useless drunk. After a long pause, she agreed. When Jihan asked if she was serious, she just shot back that he was the one pushing for it. He kind of stumbled, calling it a pointless idea, but she trusted him anyway. He hadn't been this sure about anything in years. Her strength completely blew him away. She still called him uncle, and he felt nothing but major respect for her. The comment section was pure chaos, with everyone arguing about whether they'd been played. Jihan just watched the insults roll in, totally satisfied. The heat was finally shifting to him. Sia was finally going to be safe. This was his final move, the one that would seal his own fate. Leaning right into the camera, he called out Sigan, exposing him as a failure who ran off to Japan. The commentators protested, but Jihan just kept going, vowing he'd tear down everything Sigan built there. With a super dramatic grip of his sleeve, he basically started a war between Korea and Japan. Sia, totally shocked, whispered if he really had to take it that far. He just calmly brushed off her worries. As she watched him, she realized he was a completely different person now. Jihan scratched his cheek, knowing he'd changed a ton since dying and coming back. He admitted he probably seemed like a total freeloader, but Sia immediately shut that down. Before he could even answer, the doorbell rang. She tensed up, expecting the worst. But Jihan just told her it was time to start making some bank. Meanwhile, over in Tokyo, the drama between Korea and Japan was getting intense. Koreans were furious that their hero, the Sword King, ditched them for another country. Then on a live stream, Jihan publicly challenged Sigan, which just threw gasoline on the media fire. Sigan, now in Japan, was reading all the backlash, while the news was trying to figure out who this mystery woman was he left Korea for. Shizuru stirred next to him, asking if he was okay. Even though he swore he was fine, and asked her to stop calling him Sigan since he'd picked a new identity, she refused. Holding him gently, she whispered that no name could ever change who he really was. Korea's top player, the Sword King, and her man. A little while later, an unexpected guest showed up at Jihan's place, Park Yun-sik, a big shot from the battle administration. Calm and totally collected, Jihan welcomed him right in. Park noted that Jihan didn't seem surprised at all. Jihan just nodded, saying the whole situation was messy enough for the government to step in, and Park was obviously the guy they'd send to handle it. Inside, Park and Sia exchanged polite hellos, while Jihan watched with this all-knowing smirk. Since Sigan bailed, no officials had come to visit except for Park Yun-sik, who had always been low-key supportive of them. Now it was time to get some answers. Over tea, Park admitted that while Jihan's broadcast was aggressive, it forced the government to finally face reality. The Sword King wasn't coming home. Still, they couldn't let that truth go public yet, not with the big Korea-Japan match coming up. Jihan cut right to the chase. Park didn't come all this way just to talk. He was here to ask Jihan to cancel the donation of the Sword Palace. Accepting it would be like officially giving up on the Sword King's return, and the government just wasn't ready to admit that. Jihan's sharp comeback left manager Park totally speechless. Was this for real the same guy who used to be jobless and drowning in debt? The change was undeniable. Park admitted Jihan was right. While they were still holding out hope for the Sword King's return, the government had to do something. They proposed a management deal. Jihan would be in charge of the Sword Palace as a temporary guardian. Sia looked confused by the term, but Jihan got it instantly. He asked if he'd have to give it back if the Sword King ever came back. Park confirmed that he would. The government also wanted Jihan and Sia to live at the palace during this time. Park slid over a super detailed contract, basically telling them to look it over and get back to him ASAP. Park could tell they put a lot of thought into the agreement. It was actually a pretty sweet deal. Jihan, who was already planning to ditch the Sword Palace anyway, figured why fight it if the government was going to help him out for a bit. He was cool with it, but he was like, hold up, there's one condition before I sign anything. Park was totally curious and asked what he meant. Even C looked like she wanted to know the tea. Jihan just gave this sly grin, keeping his request a secret as the scene totally faded out. Meanwhile, somewhere else in BattleNet, things went completely off the rails. The super popular streamer BJ Goldenlight went live, literally standing on the head of the Colosseum's bronze statue. The chat was absolutely losing its mind with LOLs and disbelief. With his usual extra flair, BJ hyped up his audience. In this dusty, blood-soaked arena, he shouted, "There was always one shining star, the fearless travel guru himself, BJ Light." BJ Goldenlight did this epic leap off the statue's head, stuck the landing perfectly, and sent the chat into a total frenzy. Viewers were dying laughing because you could see his underwear mid-jump, while others were cheering so stoked to see him back. One fan even dropped 100 GP thanking him for another lit and insightful stream. Grinning like crazy, BJ totally ate it up. Someone had donated before the game even kicked off. He swore he'd make this one legendary. But like not everyone was feeling the love. As soon as someone in the crowd recognized him, the whole vibe tanked. This dude again?" One guy muttered, totally annoyed. Another one looked like he was about to cry, cursing the fact that he was back. His over-the-top personality was seriously grating on them. The camera zoomed in, giving his intro. Good-looking, super energetic, and basically infamous. Once a gold-tier player, BJ had thrown his rank on purpose, just to troll games for content. Now he was a bronze-tier menace, who kept all his high-end gear just to own on weaker players for kicks. When people called him out for being too toxic, he just shrugged it off. But to a lot of players, he wasn't just a troll. He was a legit sociopath. BJ Goldenlight quickly flipped the script, hyping up the crowd, and asking who was going to be today's first victim to get wrecked. Scanning the player list, one guy, some dude named Jihan, caught his eye. The chat immediately blew up, roasting him. They called Jihan a loser, a total nobody who didn't belong. Seizing the moment, BJ walked up with some super fake praise, calling him the Sword King's brother-in-law and the top dog of the bronze players. He kept pushing for an interview, trying to use Jihan's recent fame to get more views. Jihan completely unimpressed. Knew BJ was one of those loud, super cringe streamers he couldn't stand. But seeing a chance to rack up some BattleTube achievements, he kept his cool and just walked away. BJ clutched his chest all dramatically while the chat cracked up, spamming Jihan's acting like he's the Sword King himself. Then BJ suddenly realized Jihan was streaming too. He started to panic. Was he accidentally giving this guy free clout instead of stealing his viewers? He cursed under his breath. Then a system alert popped up. It was a mission from Sword King Love. Take out Seong Jihan and make sure he finishes last. The reward was 2,000 GP. BJ was shook. That was like 2,000,001. The chat absolutely exploded. Viewers were demanding he accept the mission for the honor of the Sword King clan. The reward just kept climbing. 10,000, then 20,000. It jumped again to 31,978 GP. BJ could not believe his eyes. Right as the game started, and all the players were teleported in, the mission updated one last time with a mind-blowing reward. BJ faked a collapse in total despair, yelling, "If I just waited, it could have hit 50,000 GP." Viewers were totally roasting BJ. Some were blaming the wine, and others were just laughing at the insane money being thrown around. Then his biggest stand came back with a wild promise. 10,000 GP if BJ took out Jihan. BJ's whole mood did a 180. The sincerity of that cash hit him hard. Iron Will activated. The chat exploded with laughter. Of course he only gets serious when there's money on the line. With his pride now in focus, BJ charged forward, sword drawn. He screamed that this was it. Golden Light was about to end this game to become the Grim Reaper himself. The system alert flashed. His body shot forward. BJ went for a sneak attack from behind, but Jihan blocked it with the most random weapon. A degraded cooking set. It was some kind of god-tier relic once used to cook up heresy. When you used it with a kitchen knife, its true power was unleashed. Jihan, feeling the force behind BJ's attack, hit him back with a serious strike of his own. In a flash, BJ Golden Light was totally smoked. Viewers were stunned. But even asterisk was asterisk that weapon, someone typed. Was that legit sword key? A bronze tier player with that kind of power was literally unheard of. And if it was divinity, did that mean Jihan was a support class? The system answered with an update. Player Seong Jihan has unlocked his first skill. Achievement points plus 100. Jihan just stood there calmly in the middle of all the chaos, thinking to himself that it had been a minute since he'd last cooked. After getting wrecked in battle, BJ Golden Light rose again from the abyss, his voice fierce. He described being plunged into total darkness. No sound, no light, absolutely nothing. In that void, he said his inner glow-up got even brighter. With fiery determination, he declared, "Golden Light is back for everyone to see." Viewers were shocked, spamming the chat with questions. BJ spilled his secret. The Resurrection Cross, a one-time use revival item with some major restrictions. But the chat's vibe went south fast, and they started flaming him. They scoffed that Seong Jihan had already escaped last place, which made BJ's whole comeback totally pointless. Some even cussed him out. Humbled but not broken, BJ admitted he messed up. He'd let his guard down and looked weak. Still, he swore he'd fight back and get Seong Jihan's head on a platter. BJ didn't even see it coming. Jihan was silently creeping up right behind him. The moment BJ finally turned around, he froze solid. Jihan's smirking face was the last thing he saw before a quick strike from that cooking set landed. The system flashed. Player Seong Jihan achieves his double kill. Jihan paused, thinking, wow, it's so rare to see anyone use the viewer system these days. Which was pretty much a dead mode, because it was so buggy. But today's match had a whole different vibe, way more chaotic, and probably had a huge audience since the main event was coming up. He looked up at the stands and saw these stone-cold elves just staring him down. The chat was probably going nuts seeing actual elves watching this close. Jihan's whole mood shifted. These were the same elves that helped wreck humanity. He was going to deal with them someday, but not right now. He had to focus on the game in front of him. The chaos from the fight sent other players scrambling. They knew this was not the time to be starting beef with each other. I mean, Jihan had just totally owned Golden Light without even breaking a sweat. But Jihan was getting kind of bored with how slow things were going. Just a couple of D-grade drops. No big special quests popping up yet. He needed more action, like way more targets. And then boom, a new mission popped up. Take out all the goblins swarming the goblin champion. Jihan's eyes totally lit up. Finally, a real hunt was on. He just charged right in, swinging that cooking set of his like a total pro. The goblins were screaming and trying to run, but Jihan was giving them zero chill. He took them down one by one until not a single one was left. The system pinged, confirming his grade D double cooking set was doing its thing. Jihan just nodded. He'd finally figured out the combo. First crack the skull, then a stab to the heart. It was taking way longer than he liked, but he was learning something major. Maybe a few of those goblins could have made it if he'd known the trick sooner, but whatever, the hunt wasn't over. Then out of nowhere, this massive goblin champion steps out of the shadows. He was like 3 meters tall, way stronger and smarter than the regular mobs. The system started listing all its crazy abilities, but Jihan wasn't even listening. He didn't hesitate for a second and just went for it. One massive swing from his club sent the giant tumbling. Then super quick with his kitchen knife, he plunged it right into its heart. As it crashed down, Jihan kinda smirked. Just a big dumb goblin. The system confirmed his reward, a new divine power, but it cost him 500 achievement points. Emanation revealed that his club and knife were actually a 2-piece cooking set. On their own, they were kinda trash, but together their real power unlocked. But here's the catch. The set's grade got nerfed from D down to E, which was a major reality check that he still had a lot to figure out. He looked at his weapons and realized he had one last use of his divine power. But farming mobs was still a total drag. And behind him, it was total chaos as players started turning on each other. Just like he called it, when the mobs run out, the players become the new mobs. A crazy energy just blasted from Jihan, giving off this super deadly vibe. His viewers were freaking out in the chat. Someone with the tag One Breathmaster was spamming for everyone to hide. Jihan might not be all flashy for the stream, but his skills made him a straight-up menace. Over in Gangu at Suyaksimdong, a super popular streamer, was watching Jihan's stream and getting seriously jealous. Jihan's raw power completely destroyed this guy's whole theory that being a showman was more important than actual strength. Jihan wasn't just good. He was on a whole other level of strong. The streamer muttered to himself, I can't believe these stats. Strength 33, stamina 36, mana 34. That's an average of 35 way past the bronze level 0 cap. It's like watching a walking cheat code. Then a system notification popped up. Player Jihan just scored a kill. The weird pig-like squeal from the player he took out totally caught the streamer off guard. But the real shocker was when Jihan used his knife to take out like 4 or 5 players in a single move. The streamer's eyes went wide. He literally couldn't believe the insane wipeout he just saw. The chat was exploding with comments. Some user named Dried Yellow Croaker even called it a work of art. 4 players just got dropped in a single dash. The system feed was blowing up. Double kill, triple kill, quadra kill, and then pentakill on the field. An archer and a mage totally felt the danger, and immediately stopped fighting each other to team up. The archer fired an arrow at Jihan, but he dodged it like it was nothing. Their fear turned into this awkward, nervous laugh. And then Jihan just wiped them out. Another double kill notification flashed on screen, leaving the viewers completely speechless. People in chat were calling him insane. Someone even compared him to the legendary Yoon Se-jin. All of a sudden, his grade E double cooking set started glowing. He just gained a new divine power, but the set got nerfed again all the way down to F. At the same time, a hidden quest was completed. Get 10 kills in the Colosseum. His reward was 5,000 achievement points. But even with all that, Jihan still wasn't satisfied. He needed something that would totally change the game. And that's when the system dropped an epic quest on him. Find and basically pick a fight with the Shadow Queen hidden somewhere on the map. The rewards were insane, the attention of a constellation, but it came with a 50,000 point price tag, which is like a god-tier sponsor from the top ranks of BattleNet. This was the kind of quest only Diamond League players ever saw, and now it was his. If he could just impress one constellation, the rest would totally follow. But first he had to actually find the Shadow Queen. Hidden somewhere among all those elves, the real hunt was just getting started. Meanwhile, Jihan's 10-kill streak in the Colosseum was making major waves all over the BattleNet community. It was the first national record like that since the legend Yoon Se-jin himself, and it was blowing everyone's minds. Social media was going crazy with the news, and it was spreading through every gaming forum out there. All the attention totally blew up his channel, getting him over 10,000 new subs, and almost 4,000 people watching his stream live. And the funny part? The Sword King clan, the same guys who tried to cancel him, was now kind of forced to support him. All their hate got redirected to BJ Golden Light. The comment section on that post got super toxic, just filled with threats and people calling cap. Some people were raging, demanding payback. Others were just clowning on Golden Light's gameplay, saying he had like 20% of Jihan's kill participation, but was still shamelessly clout chasing on his stream. R.I.P. Bozo. Basically became the new meme. Seeing all this, BJ Golden Light actually had to laugh. He knew the community had totally turned on him, but he also realized that if the tide could turn this fast, he was totally on board. From that second on, he was all in on Seong Jihan. He went full stan mode, vowing to make Jihan the biggest battle star out there, even daydreaming about being his editor. Not that Jihan ever asked for one, but whatever. Back in Jihan's room, Sia was just plopped on the sofa, her eyes bugging out. She literally couldn't process what she just saw. Jihan's performance totally blew her mind. He'd gotten so strong it was like watching a pro smurf on a bunch of noobs. She was like, man, I almost feel bad for those other guys. Jihan just shrugged, saying the game world is rough and doesn't play fair. Sia thought he sounded kinda cocky, but it was also pretty funny. Then she brought up all the people spamming donations and asked why he had them blocked. Jihan glanced at his status screen and was like, oops, realizing he forgot to even turn on donations. Sia then had the idea to crank up the minimum donation amount, cause who wants constant pop-ups messing up the stream, right? Jihan was down for that, and thought about setting the minimum to like 10,000 GP. Sia did the math and was like, dude, that's 10 million won. Isn't that a little steep? But Jihan just wondered out loud if that was actually too cheap. Right then it hit him, that epic quest that popped up during the Colosseum event. The one where he had to find and troll the Shadow Queen. But finding her in that massive crowd felt pretty much impossible. But Sia with this super confident grin was like, I got you. She could totally read the look on Jihan's face and told him to let her handle it. Jihan had to smile, thinking she was acting just like Nuna. So he decided to see what Sia could do and gave her the mission to find the Shadow Queen. Sia was like, Shadow Queen, who's that? And Jihan had to admit he had no clue either, just that she was somewhere in the audience. Sia was totally hooked by how mysterious it all sounded and jumped at the chance. She promised to go through every second of the replay footage to find this mystery girl. Jihan gave her a nod, putting his faith in her. After that, he went back to his room feeling a little bad for dumping such a boring task on Sia. I mean, finding one person in that crowd was going to be like looking for a needle in a haystack for real. But he knew Sia was happy to help, so he decided to focus on stuff he'd been ignoring. A system message popped up asking if he wanted to add a new class. Jihan remembered he'd bought a class slot with all those achievement points he'd racked up. It was finally time to pick. He had 3 choices: warrior, archer, or mage. Jihan went with mage. The system confirmed it, and this sick purple aura started swirling around him. He instantly felt this new kind of power flowing right through his heart. It was totally different from divine power, like it a completely separate thing. See, Jihan picked mage to go with his support class for a very specific reason. He was trying to unlock a super unique stat you could only get by mixing those two. That stat was called force. Jihan's mind flashed back to before his regression. He remembered his master baron going on this drunk rant once talking about a power called force that was born from mixing magic power and divine power perfectly. It was crazy rare, basically impossible to get, but Baron somehow pulled it off since he was the only player with both support and mage classes. Back in the day, Baron was always giving Jihan grief for taking so long to become a citizen, wishing he'd accepted his American citizenship way sooner. He'd always joke about treating Jihan like a true American. The guy was weird, but sometimes Baron would drop some seriously deep knowledge, like how proud he was of having the SS tier gift force. Baron explained that mixing divine and magic power wasn't something other players could even try, since nobody else had both of those class types. Only he was qualified. Jihan remembered asking if it was even okay for him to know all this since he wasn't American yet. But Baron just said it didn't matter. No one else could pull off what he did anyway. So back in the present, Jihan started trying it himself, pulling divine power into his hand. While drawing magic power from his heart, he tried to mash them together. He tried to contain it all in his palm, but the energy just exploded, sending him flying. He slammed hard into the wall, groaning and rubbing his head. Yeah, that attempt was a total fail. He realized just muscling through it wasn't gonna work. You couldn't just force this energy to behave. Thinking it over, he wondered if boosting his magic power would help. But he was already almost on empty after just one try. Then a new idea sparked. What if he didn't try to force it into his hand but contained it inside his own body? His new plan was to fuse the divine power from his upper Kai center with the magic power from his middle one, and then use his martial power from the lower Ki center to keep it all stable. A perfect contained mix with 0 leaks. Super focused now, Jihan started the process again. Red energy flared up all around him, followed by this insane pain. He let out a scream as his body totally freaked out from the overload. Then a system window popped up, warning him that this was crazy dangerous. The unification of the tree key centers had started, but it was way more than a normal player could handle. It literally said, "Risk of death detected." Hearing him scream, Sia came bolting from the other room, totally panicking and calling his name. Her voice bounced off the walls as she worried about her uncle. Seong Jihan, in his mission to get OP, had accidentally tried to unify his 3 energy centers, divine magic and martial power, all while trying to create force by mixing the first 2. This whole thing kicked off a wild chain reaction that pulled in his martial energy too. But like the requirements for unifying the tri-key centers are no joke. You basically need to be a complete master. It was about mastering all 3 power types, and each one was totally different. On top of that, it required all the related stats to be over 100. Trying to pull that off without meeting those insane conditions was basically asking for a total wipeout. A few seconds after a wild scream came from Jihan's room, CIA bolted in with a cloth soaked in cold water. She gently pressed it to his forehead, looking super confused and worried. The whole situation made like 0 sense to her. How could a simple headache make someone scream that loud? Jihan, trying to get it together, could only give her some lame excuse about how weird the human body is. Getting frustrated, she raised her voice, begging him to just be real with her for a second. Then she realized how she sounded and apologized with tears in her eyes. She admitted how freaked out she'd been, legit worried that something horrible had happened to him. Jihan thought for a sec, feeling bad for not even considering CA's feelings. He had to admit to himself that he'd been way too focused on his own stuff. He looked her right in the eye, told her he was completely fine, and said he was sorry for making her worry. CIA wiped her tears and gave him a playful punch on the chest, declaring she was fine too. Since everything was cool, she cheerfully said she was going back to her search for the Lady Shadow Queen, and then took off, wishing him luck. Jihan smiled and thanked her as she left. Alone again, Jihan thought to himself that he couldn't afford to look weak in front of her anymore. He had to accept the hard truth. His attempt to merge the tri-key centers was a total fail. His experience and power levels just weren't high enough. A system notification confirmed he'd failed, but he wasn't completely bummed out. Lifting a shred of cloth from a bowl using just his power, he reminded himself that he still got what he really wanted, the unique stat known as force. The system showed that even though the full unification failed, his divine and magic powers had actually merged, creating the force. He ran through the whole thing in his head. The upper key center had divine power, the middle key center had magic power, and the lower one had martial power. Even though he couldn't link all three, mixing the divine and magic power was a huge step up. Then another system message told him the connections between the tri-key centers were barely hanging on. He noticed something weird. The starting stat for force was already at 12. Plus, martial power and force were now linked, so they shared the same stat values. This meant if he raised one, the other would go up automatically. Curious Jihan boosted his martial power stat by 2, and just as he expected, the force stat went up too. Looking at the result, he felt a mix of hype and disbelief. This stat interaction seemed almost too good to be true, like it was basically a cheat code. Still, he couldn't help but wonder what kind of insane benefits he'd get once he finally pulled off the full tri-key center unification. As much as he wanted to try again, Jihan knew that pushing it any further at his current level could be a fatal mistake. He reminded himself he'd already scored a massive advantage. To test his new skills, he tried a mage ability, but since he didn't have enough power, only a tiny little fireball appeared. He was amused watching it flicker and smiling at how cute it was. As the sun came up, light streamed through the window and woke him. The system notified him that his divine power had hit 10. He couldn't absorb divine power from holy items below D tier anymore. From now on, he'd need C tier items or higher. Checking his inventory, Jihan found 2 new weapons. One was a hand acupressure wand, which was D tier. It wasn't really for that, but that's what some people called it. The other was just a simple E tier playball. Even though they looked pretty boring, both were actually useful. Jihan yawned, thinking that while he wasn't sure about buying them, they totally did the job. Still, he grumbled about how cheap the shop was, since he'd used his own points on them. He thought about maybe selling the extra stuff on a secondhand market. Stepping out of his room, Jihan called out to CIA to see if she was up. As he went downstairs to the living room, he wondered if she was still asleep. But when he got there, he saw her sitting quietly on the sofa. It was obvious she hadn't slept at all. She slowly pulled out one earbud and greeted him with like zero energy. Jihan asked why she looked so tired, and CIA explained she'd been on a crazy intense search for something. He told her she didn't need to push herself so hard, but she insisted he look at something on her phone. With a small smile, she showed him what she'd dug up on some other race forums. They were videos secretly filmed by people with the rare scope gift, which let them spy on other races in crazy detail. Jihan thought it was a bummer that such a powerful gift was being used for creeping. CIA played a clip of Jihan's last match, pointing out 2 elves on the screen. In the video, someone was commenting on their perfect skin, hyping up their race. CIA muted the sound, looking disgusted, and mentioned that one of the elves was probably a dark elf, maybe even the Shadow Queen. She said the title seemed to fit her vibe perfectly, and asked Jihan what he thought. Jihan agreed it sounded totally possible, and he thanked CIA for all her hard work. But she wasn't 100% convinced, and said she was going to keep digging. Jihan quietly admitted to himself that figuring out the true identity of the constellation probably wasn't going to be that easy. CIA declared that starting tomorrow, she was going to start searching through foreign videos next. The hunt for truth and power was far from over. Jihan kinda did a double take at Sia legit, surprised by how pro she sounded. Her confidence was on full display. She announced that she wouldn't just edit the videos, she'd package the whole thing up to look super slick. He asked her, "Wait, you actually know how to edit videos too?" Sia nodded, admitting she wasn't some expert, but she had messed around with it before. She used to make highlight reels of her dad's matches back when it was just a hobby. Hearing that for some reason just wrecked Jihan. A huge wave of emotion just hit him out of nowhere. Thoughts of Yoon Se-jin came flooding back. His friend, his brother-in-law, now just a painful memory. Jihan couldn't help but wonder, did that guy really just up and disappear, leaving his only daughter to deal with everything alone? He clenched his jaw. What kind of father just does that? To Jihan, it wasn't just abandonment. It was a straight-up betrayal. In his head, he cursed him out for being such a worthless jerk. So rewind 2 days. That's when Manager Park had shown up to see Jihan looking like he was carrying some massive secret. During their talk, Park dropped a total bombshell. He said he thought he knew the real identity of the woman who had the Sword King so completely twisted. Sia's ears totally perked up as she immediately asked who it was. Manager Park dropped a name neither of them ever expected: Ito Shizuru. She was rumored to have an SS-grade gift, a reputation that was known in every corner of the supernatural world. Nation-tilting beauty. Her name alone just screamed power and danger. Hearing it, Sia and Jihan were both just stunned into silence. Jihan's voice was filled with rage as he asked if Yoon Se-jin had really been put under a spell. Park confirmed it was a real possibility. He said that according to the Bureau of Administration, it wasn't just some wild theory, it was the conclusion they were running with. Even though Park was just learning some of the details himself, he didn't hesitate to warn Jihan. He told him he needed to be extremely careful. That specific gift, he explained, probably did more than just control minds. They suspected it could actually change or rewrite a person's thoughts on a much deeper level. The whole idea was terrifying. Park then revealed that there had been a bunch of similar cases before. Cases where Korea's most talented rising stars had suddenly switched sides and bailed to Japan without any warning. These awesome heroes who were once so proud to rep their country had just flipped overnight. If a nation-tilting beauty gift had no limits, then the threat wasn't just a what if, it was about to happen. Park warned that someone like her could totally show up again and go after Korea's strongest players. She could easily come back and target Korea's best all over again. The story then jumps back to the present. Jihan remembered how he'd been digging like crazy for any clue about Ito Shizuru, or this so-called nation-tilting beauty ever since that meeting. But he'd found absolutely nothing. Not a single trace, not even a whisper. It was crystal clear that the Japanese government was working overtime to bury any and all information about her. She was completely off the grid. With the resources he had, Jihan couldn't dig any deeper. For now, he had no choice but to stay on high alert just like Park had told him. Even if the enemy hadn't made a move, there was no guarantee they weren't cooking something up behind the scenes. He had to be ready for whatever came next. And like it was scripted, the entire vibe across Korea shifted. A new broadcast alert started blasting on every national channel, becoming the top headline. The announcement was clear and super urgent. The Neo Self-Defense Force had officially landed in Korea. The storm wasn't coming anymore, it was here. We see Sia and Jihan getting ready, about to head out to a major event. As she fixed her outfit, Sia turned to Jihan and asked, "Are you ready? We gotta go or we're gonna be late." Jihan, casually rolling up his sleeves, replied with this cool, calm confidence. He assured her he was all set. His eyes had this quiet, intense look narrowed just a bit, as a small smirk played on his lips, a look that said he was either ready for a fight or already knew he'd won a challenge, or had already tasted victory. Inside the elevator, you could totally feel the tension coming off Sia. Jihan noticed her unease and asked if she was nervous, calmly telling her not to be. He told her there was nothing to be nervous about. Sia admitted this was her first time back in the spotlight since the whole incident with her dad, so of course she was a wreck. Jihan reminded her to just be confident the same way she was during the last broadcast. He told her there was zero reason to worry about what other people thought, especially since they hadn't done anything wrong. His words seemed to help, and Sia nodded. As the elevator doors opened to the lobby, Jihan looked at her and said that most people have already made up their minds about what they want to believe. Just then, Manager Park came over to greet them, saying they'd been waiting for him. He let Jihan know that everything he'd asked for was all set up and they were ready to start. Jihan thanked him, saying he was counting on him to see things through. Manager Park, still looking a little stressed, brought up the very weird request Jihan had made earlier, an auction of the Sword King's personal collection. The former Sword King Yoon Sejin's most cherished items and personal belongings were about to be put up for auction. The whole event was being hosted by Yoon Sia from the Korean BattleNet administration. It finally started to click for Park what Jihan was planning. Realizing this was all a big play to draw Japan in, Jihan confirmed it. He had handpicked every single auction item for a very specific reason: the BattleNet. It was Yoon Sejin's old connector with all his combat data still locked inside. Jihan knew Japan would be drooling over it, especially for that data. He was even betting someone important would show up in person to snag it. Cut to a sick-looking car speeding towards the auction. Inside, some mystery person was on their way. Back at the venue, Jihan kept talking to Manager Park. Like whether Yoon Sejin actually showed or not, these people had to face the facts. Sooner or later, they'd get that this was their only move. Park was just staring at Jihan, totally in awe. This guy felt like he could literally see the future. Jihan made it crystal clear this was their last shot to change how everyone saw them. He told Manager Park to make sure the reporters were glued to the NEO Self-Defense Force table. Then, out of nowhere, total chaos erupted at the entrance. Some lady and two dudes were screaming Sea's name, trying to get her to look. Security jumped in, but the group was all like, "We're family. We just want to talk for a sec." Sia turned, and yup, it was her aunt and uncles. Her aunt was fuming, yelling at her like, "Have you lost your mind?" She was freaking out that even if they needed cash, an auction like this was just insane. She started accusing Jihan of tricking poor innocent Sia and trying to sell off their family's precious stuff. Jihan stepped up, calling them out on their BS. He reminded them how they scammed people using his dad's name and got kicked to the curb. He was so done with their drama. Did they really think he was some kind of pushover? He wasn't falling for their act. They totally helped themselves to the money when his dad wasn't around. The aunt was shook, telling Jihan to watch his mouth. But then Sia shut it down, saying everything her dad left was hers. Period. They had zero right to say anything. She told security to throw them out, saying they were not her family. She walked off with Jihan, not even glancing back. Her aunt was still screaming for them to stop, but security was like, "Only people on the list can get in." Jihan gave Sia a look, totally impressed, and teased her, "Wow, you were extra cool today." She just smiled and was like, "I always come through when it counts." Manager Park led them over to the stage. The second they hit the spotlight, the whole place lit up with camera flashes. The bright lights were kind of bugging Sia, but she kept her cool. The reporters instantly started throwing questions at them. One asked Jihan what the deal was with this auction, pointing out how weird it was to let foreign groups in on it. Another one turned to Sia, asking if she was being pressured into donating the Sword Palace or doing the auction. Others were asking if the Sword King had just given up on coming back and accused the siblings of cashing in on his stuff. Another reporter yelled at Jihan, wanting to know what he thought about Battleman's latest stats. Then with no warning, Jihan unleashed some insane divine power that instantly shattered every single camera lens in the room. Everyone was just stunned. Nobody saw how it happened or who even did it. Jihan's voice cut through the silence, super calm and steady. This was an auction, not a press conference, and he told everyone to chill out. The auction was starting. They had 3 things up for grabs. First up was Yoon Se-jin's BattleNet connector, tweaked to have a 99% pain reduction feature. Plus, it came with all the critical data stored inside. We're talking Yoon Se-jin's own combat analysis and data from top-tier Korean and East Asian players. When they heard that, the crowd started buzzing. Getting the Sword King's data was a huge deal. And the analysis on other players? That was a major bonus, especially with the big Korea-Japan match coming up. Jihan watched them all with this smug little smirk. Yeah, they weren't going to pass up a single one of these items. I mean, you can't just get your hands on high-level player data that easily. So the auction hall was buzzing and the media was finally quieting down, when suddenly this voice just cut through everything. A guy calmly raised his hand and stepped forward like he owned the place. With this super smooth voice, he introduced himself as Takeda Kazuo, the head of recruiting for Japan's Neo Self-Defense Force. His announcement wasn't just bold, it was a total power play. Takeda said all confident that since the auction was officially on, he wanted to start the bidding at 5 billion yen. His words echoed through the room and every single eye snapped to him. That number wasn't just insane, it was a straight-up flex. He made it clear his offer was for everything on the auction block, basically saying he was going to buy it all in one shot. But he wasn't done. After a little pause, Takeda added something else. He politely asked for a private meeting with both Seong Jihan and Yoon Se-ah. The second he said it, you could feel the whole room start whispering. Jihan's face got hard, and without even blinking he walked closer, his presence just filling up the space. His eyes got sharp like a silent warning, but his voice was steady and sharp too. He told Takeda that if he had something to say he should say it, right here out in the open for everyone to hear. Jihan shot down the private meeting idea, completely saying this was not the time or the place. And with a little bit of shade, in his tone he pointed out that Japan of all countries should know how sensitive this whole thing was. Takeda looked kind of thrown for a sec, then let out a nervous laugh and tried to play it off. He tried to play it cool like he was just another dude at the auction telling Jihan to chill out, but that whole humble act lasted for like a second. His face then totally twisted into this nasty smirk, showing off the major jerk hiding under that fake polite vibe. With a bit of sass in his voice, he added that if Jihan was going to keep copying an attitude, then maybe it was time for his personal guard to step up. And right on cue, this silent figure moved forward, his bodyguard, known only as Shadow, who just slid out from the sidelines with these calculated steps, planting herself right in front of Jihan. Her face was a total blank, but the killer focus in her eyes said it all. She slowly unsheathed her sword, holding it low, but totally ready, and met Jihan's death stare with a seriously chilling vibe. The whole room got super tense. You could literally feel the pressure building. T kept talking, his voice now dripping with smugness. He explained that even though his guard might not be on the Sword King's level of power, she was still a top-tier player. Strong, skilled, and super dangerous. He claimed he wasn't threatening anyone, though. He insisted he was just like suggesting caution, and threw in this lame laugh that was so obviously a threat. Jihan just stared at the woman, his face unreadable, but his mind was already breaking down her whole presence. Her stance, her composure, even the look in her eyes. It all reminded him of someone. With a glare that was slowly heating up, he thought to himself that she was trying way too hard to copy Yoon Se-jin's aura. Under the surface, Jihan was getting seriously ticked off. He knew exactly what this was. A total performance, a flex hidden behind fancy words and a boatload of cash. And Jihan knew one thing for sure: he wasn't about to play their game. It happened in a flash. The shadow appeared in front of Seong Jihan, lunging with her blade, ready to do some serious damage. But in that exact same moment, he completely shut her down. Without even hesitating, Jihan decked Shadow right in the face. She gritted her teeth, totally frustrated. He coldly asked if she wanted another round. Just as she went to grab her sword, Jihan put a firm hand on her shoulder and calmly warned her that it'd be way smarter to stop right now. The whole scene was being live-streamed to the entire world on his BattleTube. Jihan reminded her of that, making it crystal clear that swinging a weapon with millions of people watching would be a seriously dumb move. Viewers on the livestream started blowing up the comments. People were cussing out and dragging T, calling him out for going way too far. They clowned them for being so desperate. Since they couldn't beat Jihan for real, they had to get violent instead. Trying to smooth things over, T bowed and started apologizing, claiming they'd never even think of doing something like that. He got all dramatic, saying his bodyguard just got carried away. He apologized for her, but then T's whole tone changed. That sketchy smirk came back as he mentioned there was something they needed to clear up. He reminded everyone that his offer of 5 billion yen came with a request for a private meeting, and he insisted that the answer had to come from Miss Yunya herself. Yunya looked totally shocked and was like, "Wait, you mean me?" The comments started flying again. Viewers were getting super sus of T's intentions, calling him a total scumbag. As he got closer to Yunya, T kept going, pointing out that the Sword King's assets now belonged to his daughter. That meant Yunya was the real owner of this whole auction. His pitch for a private meeting, he claimed, was for her own good. He kept pushing, asking if she wasn't the least bit curious about how her dad was doing. Yunya went stiff, totally shocked he brought that up. T told her she could ask whatever she wanted. He said he had a lot to say to her too, And then with this super fake gentle voice, he asked what her choice was going to be. Yunya sized up the situation, but honestly, it was a no-brainer. Unless you were a complete idiot, nobody would turn down that kind of money. But even with all that on the table, Yunya stood her ground and shot him down. The viewers in the chat absolutely lost it laughing at her savage rejection. T was visibly shook his face all twisted up as he started to panic stammer in a mix of Japanese and Korean. He asked if she was seriously turning down 5 billion yen just because of a private meeting. He pointed out that it was the same as 500 billion won. Yunya didn't even flinch. She explained that just like her uncle said, she had to be super careful because of everything going on. If talking to her dad meant she had to make some kind of trade, she wasn't interested. And most importantly, she was still a minor. She was going to follow the lead of her legal guardian, her uncle. The viewers laughed even harder, especially at how flustered T looked and his cringy body language. Some people were roasting his hand gestures, saying he was posing like some cute girl and they were so over him. Whispers started going through the crowd. Some people were relieved, so glad that Yunya wasn't going to fall under Japan's influence. But others were like, hold up, it's too early to celebrate. Even though she said no to the private meeting, the real decision would come down to whatever the NEO Self-Defense Force offered next. T accepted her rejection with a heavy tone. He was like, I guess it can't be helped. Then he made it official, declaring that the NEO's Self-Defense Force was keeping their offer at 5 billion yen. He tried to clarify that the private meeting was just a personal bonus he decided to throw in. Listening from a distance, Jihan's expression got rock hard. He realized Tae had been trying to trick them all along. Then T whipped out an envelope and showed it to Yunya. He claimed the 5 billion yen offer was actually a direct order from the Sword King himself. He handed over the letter, saying it was from none other than Ryuhei, written specifically to Yunya. He then let out this super cocky laugh, asked if this meant they'd actually won the bid. CIA just stared down at the envelope, totally frozen. Takeda meanwhile leaned back with a super smug grin, clearly loving how the auction turned out. He was all like, wow, didn't expect to get the Sword King's stuff so easily. The Koreans didn't even put up a real fight. And the BattleNet officials who were supposed to be in charge just looked completely helpless. Takeda's tone was dripping with arrogance as he trashed them, pointing out how they couldn't even scrape together a bid of 5 billion yen. His words totally hit a nerve, but no one said a thing. The room was just thick with silent anger. You could tell everyone was cursing him out in their heads, furious at his smug attitude but unable to do anything about it. Still soaking in his victory, Takeda turned to Jihan with a casual smile and said the auction was over way too fast. Jihan just watched him quietly. In his head, he was remembering who this guy really was. Takeda, the head recruiter for Japan's NEO Self-Defense Force. Before Jihan's whole regression thing, this dude had a seriously scary reputation. He was a beast at recruiting. He was so good at poaching high-level players from overseas that the US government literally called him a threat and banned him from the country. Because of his relentless moves and sly nature, he got a pretty nasty nickname, the Japanese Calamity. Takeda, now 100% sure he'd won, suggested they go sign the contract right away. Jihan just nodded, keeping a straight face. But inside, he was on high alert. He suspected Takeda was connected to a player with that nation-tilting beauty trait. That alone made him a huge danger. Jihan knew way better than to underestimate someone like that. Still, something about the whole situation felt super off. The vibe in the auction hall had turned all heavy and weird. Japan had won the auction so easily it almost felt staged, like they had the whole thing planned out. Whispers started spreading and soon everyone was questioning it out loud. Some people were like, how does it even make sense to start at 500 billion? Others were just mad, wondering why they were even invited if the winner was already decided. The crowd started getting seriously antsy. The tension was so thick you could feel it. Outside, people watching the stream were thinking the same thing, commenting on how Japan just won like that. A lot of them were asking if the whole event was just a joke from the beginning. A few pointed out that this kind of thing only happens if there was a shady backroom deal already in place. In the middle of all this confusion and anger, CIA stepped forward. Her hands were shaking as she unfolded a letter. It was a handwritten note from her dad, the Sword King. She started reading it out loud, her voice soft but steady. The letter said her dad had heard she decided to donate the Sword Palace. He just didn't get it. He had no idea why she'd do that and said he was disappointed. He called the letter his final inheritance for her and told her to use it wisely. Then came the part that really hurt. He wrote that their relationship, father and daughter, was officially over. He warned her not to expect a single thing from him ever again. CIA kept reading. Tears started welling up in her eyes. Her voice cracked. Sad tears dropped from her face onto the paper, smudging the ink. But even though she was heartbroken, she let out this bitter laugh, trying to smile through the pain. She admitted that the handwriting was definitely her dad's. Jihan watched silently, his heart aching for her. He realized right then that the whole nation-tilting trait wasn't just a cool name. It really had the power to mess with your heart and mind. Even though Jihan never liked the Sword King, not his personality, not his actions, he had to admit that at least for his daughter, the guy had been a dependable and level-headed dad. It was painful to watch even that last piece of warmth get totally ripped away. The guy actually went and emotionally destroyed CIA, just to cut ties with her completely. CIA's face hardened as she turned to Takeda. She told him to give Mr. Ito a message that she'd received her father's final inheritance, and was actually glad their relationship was completely over. Then she glared at the letter in disgust. With a dry laugh, she said that ripping it up would probably be a hassle for whoever had to clean it up. But whatever. She tore the paper up anyway, and the pieces fluttered down like sad confetti. Jihan stepped in gently and told her he'd take care of the scraps. Tapping into his divine powers, he summoned a small controlled flame in his palm. The floating pieces of the letter caught fire in midair and burned into ash, vanishing before they even hit the ground. The whole crowd gasped. Whispers shot through the hall. People started freaking out like, wait, what did we just see? Is Seong Jihan a mage, not a supporter? They'd seen him fight, with the raw power of a warrior in a brawl. And now he's pulling off divine magic at that. To be able to do both combat and magic so easily was pretty much unheard of. Takita's eyes narrowed, his mind racing with pure greed. He was obsessed now. Seong Jihan was more than just some interesting guy. He was a prize Takita had to get no matter the cost. He breathed out sharply. The hunger in his eyes was obvious. Jihan was someone Japan absolutely had to get on their team. That moment kicked off total chaos. Reps from a bunch of different guilds all swarmed toward Jihan. Everyone was totally desperate to get him on their team. They were shoving business cards in his face, all talking over each other. They were practically begging him to join their guild, promising him literally anything he wanted. One guy was all like, I was first, that has to mean something. Another was begging for just a sec of his time. Jihan was totally caught off guard by how intense everyone was being. Jihan threw his hands up, trying to get them to chill. He explained that he was still processing everything and wasn't in the right headspace to talk guild contracts. The pressure was insane, and he just needed a minute to think. Right then, Sia kinda weakly called out to him. Uncle Jihan turned to her and asked if she could just go on ahead, promising he'd catch up as soon as he could ditch this crazy mob. But Sia didn't answer right away. She put a hand to her head, looking super pale. She stuttered that it wasn't about leaving. Her head was like killing her. And then boom, her legs just gave out. She totally crumpled to the floor. Jihan's heart literally dropped when he saw her fall. He looked completely freaked out and rushed to her side, yelling her name like his life depended on it. As Sia went down, Jihan lunged and caught her just in time. Cradling her, he was all like, open your eyes, how are you feeling? He promised they'd go straight to the hospital. But then Sia whispered the truth. It was all an act. She'd seen Jihan getting swamped by the chaotic crowd, so she decided to pull a fast one, to step in and help him out. Her whole fainting performance was totally planned just to get everyone off his back. Meanwhile, security guards swooped in, holding back the restless mob, trying to keep things from getting out of control while everyone was whispering and gossiping. Back in Jihan's arms, Sia looked up with this little smile and asked, so was my acting any good? Jihan couldn't help but crack a smile. He laughed to himself, thinking she was so much like Nuna, fearless, smart, and always ready to make a dramatic entrance. Outside the hall, the stream chat was blowing up with feels. Some people were blaming the whole thing on that traitor Sword King, while others were all, OMG, Sia, don't be sick, taking charge of the situation. Jihan faced the crowd. He apologized, saying firmly, we have to shut this down right now. My niece isn't feeling well and needs to rest. The way he said it left zero room for argument. To keep the act going, Jihan played along. He turned to Sia and asked, you think you can walk? Gotta stay in character, right? Sia just said she wanted to go home and crash. Amidst the crowd, Tito came up again, flashing his business card with a slick little smile. He apologized if he'd caused any drama and gave him a formal invite. He hoped Jihan would hit him up sometime soon so they could properly introduce themselves. Jihan glanced at the card for a second, then poof, a little flame appeared in his palm. Without hesitating, he torched the card to ash, not saying a word. That was his answer, loud and clear. Viewers online went ballistic. The comments exploded, roasting how some Korean bronze player just dissed the head of the global rank 4 guild's management team. Some were cracking up, pointing out how the bald guy looked absolutely furious. But Tito's smirk came right back. Secretly, he was even more impressed with Jihan. It was just like he expected. This Jihan kid was the real deal. The power he flexed, even doing something as small as burning a business card, made a huge impact. That mysterious strength was priceless. Even if Jihan was technically still a bronze player, he was a total rising star you'd be crazy not to bet on. Tito swore he'd get him for Japan no matter what. Once the chaos died down and they got out of the hall, Jihan and Sia shared a high five. Jihan praised her, admitting, that was an epic performance, you almost had me fooled. Sia was totally beaming, puffing out her chest a little. She bragged, is there anything I can't do? Jihan just raised an eyebrow and teased her with one word, cooking. Just then, a system notification popped up in front of Jihan. A little chime meant he had an unread message. Curious, he opened it. The message was about a wild donation. Someone had sent 10,000 GP with a note that said, it was awesome meeting you today, Jihan. Let's meet up again one-on-one next time. Your #1 fan taken. Jihan read the message out loud, a little stunned. The stream was over and someone still went out of their way to donate that much. That name definitely rang a bell. Taken. Sia peeked over his shoulder and cringed. That handwriting is trash. She grimaced at the super dramatic tone. Her expression soured even more. Turns out her very first donator was that asterisk guy. With a sigh, she muttered that she was gonna have to block him ASAP. Just as Jihan and Sia started to walk away from the mob, a calm but confident voice stopped them. Owen approached, greeting them both formally. Wait, scratch that, it was Hyun, and Gayun was right beside her. With a friendly smile, Hyun introduced herself, explaining she'd come specifically to meet Jihan, saying she'd been looking forward to it for a while. She apologized if she just popped up out of nowhere. Jihan shot back, this area is supposed to be restricted to non-personnel, so how did you even get in? But as she spoke, Jihan realized her voice sounded super familiar. Hyun explained that she's got a pretty tight relationship with the Republic of Korea's BattleNet Administration Bureau. She used her connections to get access. Her tone was breezy, as she casually mentioned being a pretty big deal at work, even joking about her status as some Nepo hire. Jihan's eyes narrowed a little. That vibe, that total confidence. It felt like he'd met her somewhere before. Just then, Hyun switched it up and called Jihan Match Predictor Mr. Sun. The way she shifted her posture, something totally clicked in Jihan's head. A memory just surfaced, and he froze on the spot, staring at her, completely shook. Sia, seeing Jihan's stunned look, got super suspicious. She was wondering what his deal was making a face like that. Then it hit her. No way is he actually into this woman. Then out of nowhere, Jihan dropped a quote about life being full of possibilities. Words from some guy known for being a great writer but also having a major gambling problem. He turned to Hyun and asked if she vibed with that quote. Hearing that name made Gayong go on high alert. She stepped right in front of Hyun, all protective. Her voice got louder as she demanded to know how Jihan knew Millie's motto. She stressed that, like almost nobody knew, Millie was a legit gambler. The word gambler had her looking seriously worried. She demanded to know how some random dude could know that. Hyun just looked at Gayong, so embarrassed. In her head, she was totally scolding her for just blurting stuff out like that. A genuine gambler. How does that even make sense? Meanwhile, Jihan was thinking to himself. Okay, there was no doubt anymore. This woman was Zero, the manager of America First. Besides him, she was the only other Korean in that guild. Back in the day, she was known for being a total mess, always into the bottle and hitting the tables. But she had this one insane gift, her crazy powerful training ability. At first, her weld ability was only meant to boost experience points. Once the growth areas opened up after the tutorial, it started beefing up stats, gift tiers, and way more. Out of all the training specialists, she was on a whole other level. Zero had climbed the ranks to become the Reserve Guild's master. Just then, Jihan's system window popped up with a skill one that jacked up all growth efficiency for a player he picked, including their experience, stats, and gifts. Still hung up on what Jihan said, Taeyong turned back to Hyun and asked if she'd been hitting up gambling sites too. Hyun, now visibly flustered, told her to just be quiet. Jihan was putting all the pieces together. First the Plum Blossom Sword and now Zero. This was why the Reason Guild had such a sick foundation for real. To chill everyone out, Jihan explained he'd seen Hyun during his old live streams. A message from some fan had really stuck with him, so he just threw it out there to see. He apologized if it came off as super random. Still completely floored. Gayong asked Hyun if she was in the stream chat too. Hyun, so frustrated, told her to shut up. Turning back to Jihan, Hyun cleared her throat. She admitted that being called a gambler out of the blue wasn't the best feeling. Jihan kinda smirked to himself. In his head, he was like, well, the label fits. It was the truth. Sia caught his expression and her whole face lit up. He smiled. She started to wonder, OMG, does he actually like this woman? As the vibe settled down, Hyun pulled out her phone. She said starting things off all relaxed wasn't so bad. For some reason, it felt like they were probably gonna be seeing each other a lot more from now on. Watching this all go down, Sia got even more excited, and seeing Hyun with her phone sparked a wild idea. Was this it? Was she about to get an aunt? Hyun moved in closer and told Jihan that the Reason Guild was interested in him. She'd been hoping they could meet up one-on-one sometime. Sia was totally overwhelmed, about to burst with excitement. The thought just kept replaying in her head. Was she seriously about to get an aunt? Meanwhile, Hyun glanced over at Gayong and was silently hyping herself up. She felt like she'd been impossibly charming, a total masterclass in handling guys, a straight-up demo from an expert trainer. Jihan, all flustered, stumbled over his words. He said he forgot his number. Sia raised an eyebrow. What kind of lame excuse was that? Was he trying to play hard to get? Maybe it was all part of his game. If so, she had to have her uncle's back. Immediately, Sia got back into character and pretended to feel dizzy. She leaned against Jihan, saying she needed to go rest. Jihan wondered if she was for real and actually wanted to go inside. If that was the case, he figured he'd just roll with it. He turned to Hyun and apologized. His niece wasn't feeling so hot, so they had to head back. He asked if she could just leave her business card, promising he'd be the one to hit her up. Hyun just stood there kinda stunned as Jihan and Sia walked off. After they were gone, Hyun turned to Gayong and sighed, telling her to just laugh it off. Gayong, barely holding it together, apologized through her giggles. But Hyun, now super irritated, snapped that she was being so annoying. Sia glanced at Jihan with a teasing smirk, her tone playful but sharp, as she brought up something she found totally random. She never pictured him wearing clothes that gave off such major dad vibes. Jihan, a little thrown but unfazed, answered with total honesty. He explained that most of his old clothes didn't fit him anymore, so this was basically all he had. Nothing wrong with that, right? Sia nodded, only like half convinced. She admitted that as long as he looked good, it was fine. But then her tone totally shifted, getting way more critical. His entire way of thinking, she said, was just lame and so outdated. The kind of mindset he was showing off was from a totally different time. She shook her head again like she was looking at a dinosaur fossil and scoffed at how old-fashioned he was acting, pretending not to know his own phone number, using moves like playing hard to get. That was from like a whole other century. It wasn't just lame, it was seriously pathetic. She was all like, he was lucky she had a sixth sense for calling out that kind of BS. Jihan was totally lost and tried to keep up, but finally just admitted he wasn't getting any of it. Sia just stared at him for a sec before asking dead serious if he was losing his memory or something. Jihan just looked back at her and calmly said, no, he wasn't. He just had no clue what she was even talking about. It was quiet for a second before Jihan turned back to the game. The system window popped up in front of him, showing a new quest. Welcome to the Gangnam District's Bronze League zone. The objective was pretty basic. Defend the crystal and make it through a wave of zombies coming at you. Jihan let out a huge sigh, feeling totally drained already. Trying to deal with Sia had completely wiped him out. Then that thought hit him again. Did she for real think he had a thing for Lee Hyen? That was a wild gamble. No one in their right mind would just assume something that crazy. But then his brain jumped to something way more important. That insane reunion with Zero. He so did not expect to see her again like that. His mind flashed back to a super old memory to a day he was talking with Hyen, except back then she had showed up looking like a completely different person. She was totally fuming, slamming her hands down and screaming because she lost yet another match. She just couldn't get how someone like that, some dude she called a mage, could have possibly gotten the win. It made zero sense to her, and you could totally hear the rage in her voice. Jihan's voice came back in the memory, explaining that they got closer because they both knew what it was like to lose something big. They'd both lost their homes. It was this low-key thing that connected them. In their downtime, they'd drink and guess who might win the next matches. But for Zero, it wasn't just guessing. It was basically an obsession. He reminded her that he'd called it that Diego was gonna win. That guess wasn't just a vibe, it was based on cold, hard numbers. Diego was an SS-rank player. Hyen had totally blown it off back then, arguing that someone blessed with only the old-school gift of a soccer god couldn't be that OP. But Jihan was firm, like stats don't lie. That was the T. She kinda gave in, but still swore she'd win next time. As long as betting was off the table, Sia's voice cut through the memory. Sounding let down again, she told him he was a total disappointment. In a world with endless possibilities, she couldn't just let something like this slide. Jihan, who was clearly getting annoyed, now told her to quit making excuses, especially since she was always the one taking the L. He was so overhearing the same old story. Then, giving her a look, he asked if she was ever gonna wipe that weird mark off her face. He lightly touched her cheek, his fingers just brushing it. She said never. That mark was a symbol, the permanent price she paid for making a deal with some dark entity. Jihan, thinking to himself, told the stream that besides both being new citizens, he and Hyen had a ton of other things in common. She then looked at Jihan with this super intense, mixed-up expression and asked why he was so much stronger now. If he'd been this strong back in Korea, then maybe her friend wouldn't have had to die. Her voice was all shaky with sadness and leftover anger. But then she stopped. She said she didn't even have the right to say stuff like that. After all, she was a messed-up person too, just drowning in guilt and hating herself. The two of them tapped their glasses together, sharing a quiet moment where they just got each other. Jihan thought hard about that moment. The guilt, the shame, feeling so helpless. They were both trapped by their regrets, haunted by the people they couldn't save. Snapping back to now, Jihan muttered that yeah, something like that had happened before. His thoughts were cut off by the live chat blowing up. Viewers were getting antsy. One dude demanded to know how long he was gonna just stand there being all emo. Another one roasted his suit, asking what happened to the comfy sweats. Someone else joked that he must have come straight from some fancy auction. Another fan pointed out that Jihan looked like he was trying to thirst trap the whole stream again. One super observant viewer zoomed in on his hand and spotted a massive weapon. It was the Orc priest's greatsword, a sacred sword they used to use for sacrifices at the Hmong altar. It was made to slice through offerings for their god. Jihan stared at the weapon, thinking to himself, a C-rank sacred sword being this cheap should have been a huge red flag. And yep, there was a catch. It was ridiculously heavy. Most people couldn't even lift it, let alone swing it around. Still, as he gave it a test swing, his moves were smooth and powerful. He could totally handle the weight, maybe even better than he thought. He figured it wasn't the worst thing ever. The viewers started spamming the chat again. Some were guessing he had to be a gold-tier warrior with that kind of raw strength. Others were demanding he pop open his stat window. Some were actually curious, others just wanted the drama. People were so confused. He fought like a warrior and used magic, but his class was still listed as supporter. It wasn't adding up, and everybody wanted answers. Jihan, totally unfazed, slammed his sword into the ground and glanced at the growing crowd. With over 12,000 subs now, all the attention was getting to be a lot. But the viewers just kept spamming. Show us the stats. Show us the stats. People were literally joking that their lives were on hold until they saw his stats. It sparked this huge debate about whether he was a warrior, a support, or something else entirely. Jihan was tempted to just show them, but he decided not to. It was way too risky to show his cards right now. He figured if he just ignored them long enough, they'd get over it. Just then, a system window popped up. Subscriber recruitment complete. He wondered if he should go for a classic move. Then he turned to his viewers and reintroduced himself. He was like, I know a lot of you are dying to see my stats. The viewers were not buying it. They totally called him out for stalling again. Finally, he made a huge announcement. He would drop his stats, but only if he hit 20,000 subscribers. The chat absolutely blew up. Some people laughed, saying the goal was impossible. Others were super harsh, bringing up old drama and just raging at him. One person called it a promise from a Bronze League nobody. Someone else yelled that he should just admit he's never going to show them. Just as he expected, Jihan knew the long-term goal wasn't hitting right. The crowd was mad, and you could feel the backlash all over the chat. Jihan faced the growing crowd of viewers, looking totally confident, his voice even and strategic. He told them he had one more surprise. If at any point from here on out he ever lost his #1 spot, he would reveal his stats, no hesitation. Right then and there. The audience went wild with disbelief. Comments started flooding in. Some were in total awe, others were super skeptical. The idea that he'd challenge himself to keep a perfect win streak sounded absolutely insane to them. It was risky, bold, and borderline crazy, but it was also super exciting. Viewers were literally on the edge of their seats, hooked by the high stakes. Jihan, watching the chat scroll, made a promise to himself. In his head, this was more than enough to keep the crowd on the line. They were simple. Give them suspense, give them drama, and they'll follow you anywhere. He had them exactly where he wanted, but then more comments started pouring in. A lot of them doubted he could pull it off in a team match. They knew how unpredictable those games can be. Some viewers were worried, like, what if he gets a troll on his team? You know, someone who just throws the game or messes things up on purpose. A few were openly hoping it would happen just to see how Jihan would handle the pressure. Before those thoughts could even sink in, the ground suddenly cracked open with energy. A blinding golden light shot down from the sky, lighting up the whole area with this epic glow. 3 figures landed one after another, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. Jihan's eyes went wide. No way. BJ, Golden Light, Juyuk, and Masid all just walked into the arena together. It felt totally surreal. He couldn't even hide his shock. Could all 3 of them really get into the same match? Like, what are the odds? Something about it felt way too sus to be random. BJ Golden Light, always the drama king, immediately started his usual over-the-top performance. He turned to Jihan with this dramatic flair, declaring their reunion was destiny, like it was written in the stars. To him, this was fate doing its thing. But not everyone was feeling the vibe. The mage Juyuk just stood there stiffly, looking super bitter. His eyes narrowed the second he saw Jihan. He didn't say a word, but his body language was screaming that he was pissed. Clearly he hadn't forgotten their last run-in. Jihan glanced at him and tried to remember his name. It was barely there. The memory was pretty much a blur and not a big deal to him. Unlike Juyuk, who was obviously still holding a grudge. He then turned to Masid, really seeing the guy for the first time. This was their first meeting. But Masid, who was once celebrated as Argentina's best player, now just looked like a shadow of his former self. His posture was weak. He'd lost his edge, and a wild beard covered most of his face. He looked messy and worn out, like someone who'd given up a long time ago. But then something else grabbed Jihan's attention. Something didn't add up. His team comp had him as the support, Sparkle Boy as the warrior, and Juyuk as the mage. And yet Masid was showing up as an archer. That couldn't be right. Jihan clearly remembered him being a mage before. The class change was confusing, almost creepy. Something weird was definitely going on. Meanwhile, Juyuk was just fuming. He couldn't believe he was stuck on a team with Jihan again. The last time they met, it went so badly for him. He lost his skill because of that dude. He gritted his teeth just thinking about it, his fists shaking with anger. Just looking at Jihan's face made him sick. It was like the sight of him was a reminder of everything he hated. Then, as if on cue, a system window popped right up in front of Juyuk. A new mission just dropped for him. Destroy the crystal and stop Jihan from taking first place. The reward was an insane 50,000 GP. The moment he read it, Juyuk's mind just blanked in disbelief. His expression flipped from annoyed to completely shocked. The mission was clear, but the meaning behind it was deep. This wasn't just some random match. Something way bigger was happening. The game itself wanted Jihan stopped, and Juyuk was just given the ultimate reason to make it happen. The system window flashed with an alert signaling the start of the round. Instantly, Masid jumped into action. Without even hesitating, he booted his soccer ball hard, hitting 2 zombies nearby and knocking them right off the platform to the level below. It was a bold and totally unorthodox move, but he got totally roasted by the viewers. The chat was literally blowing up with laughing emojis and sarcastic comments. They were clowning on his strategy, making fun of him right to his face. Like, what was he even thinking? Did he for real think he could take down zombies with a football? To them, it was just absurd and kinda hilarious. But Mas just tuned out all the haters. He looked over at Jihan, his voice all serious and determined. He said super confidently that being a support is different, something most players just don't get. As an archer, he needed way more strength to actually do his job right. He made it clear that in a team game like this one, everyone had to stick to their role for the plan to even work. Then he dropped a secret, this skill, a buff he'd never been able to use until now. His stats had always been a little too low, but not anymore. With his divine power finally hitting a new level, it was go time. Without wasting a second, Jihan popped the buff. This insane wave of power just shot out from him, covering his teammates and giving them a major strength boost. BJ's eyes went wide the second it hit. He felt the change immediately. Power was surging through him like never before. He looked at Jihan with a huge grateful smile and gave him a real deal thanks for the buffs. Meanwhile, Mage Du was just frozen, a look of total disbelief on his face. His mind was racing. How the heck could that psycho Jihan be the one giving them a buff? It made zero sense. It went against everything he thought he knew about the guy. The dude who always did his own thing was suddenly helping the team. Jihan kept the pressure on. He turned to Yuyuk with a smirk and started talking down to him. He called him out all sarcastic, calling him the old-faced mage. Then he threw down a challenge. Was he gonna actually play the game right? For once, BJ, getting super nosy, looked between them and started firing questions at Juke. Yo, do you guys know each other? Was there some kind of drama between you two? Were you friends or something? Or is there some big rivalry going on? Yuduk was totally bugging out inside. Jihan's whole vibe was seriously getting on his nerves, but even worse, it was making him uneasy. If he went along with it too easily, he was scared Jihan would just ditch him again, just like he did before. He wasn't about to get played twice. Cutting through the tension, Jihan just calmly said he was leaving the top lane to Guyuk. Then without even hesitating, he leapt off the platform and dove straight into the lower field, where the zombie swarm was craziest. Masid saw it and was completely floored. What the heck was Jihan doing? Was he out of his mind? Who just jumps into that kind of chaos on purpose? Guyuk, totally steaming, now screamed at Masid. He called him a blind football-kicking idiot, just letting all his anger out. Inside, he was furious. He'd hated this whole situation from the get-go. The setup, the vibe, Jihan's attitude, it all felt so wrong. Did Jihan seriously think he was some kind of sidekick, a tool he could just use and toss? No? Not a chance. Let Jihan play the hero for now. He'd get what was coming to him eventually. Just then, another system window popped up in front of Guyuk. This one had a different kind of message, cold and super tempting. It told him to stop Seong Jihan from getting first place by breaking the crystal. The reward for doing it was a massive 61,800 units. A dark smile spread across Yujix's face. So, that's how it's gonna be. Let's just see how long Jihan can keep doing things his way. Down in the thick of it all, Jihan was already on the move. Fire mana was coursing through him, mixing perfectly with his divine power. Flames and energy were literally dancing all over his body. Swinging his sword with insane precision, he charged in, taking down zombies one by one. Every single slash was strong, clean, and totally lethal. Masid, watching from up top, couldn't believe what he was seeing. His jaw kinda dropped as he muttered to himself, seriously impressed. Jihan wasn't just fighting, he was owning this. That dude. He was one crazy Korean bronze support, but he was something else entirely too. BJ, totally hyped, turned to his viewers full of energy. His voice got louder as he pointed at the chaos below. He yelled that what they were seeing was absolutely incredible. It was all happening live in real time, and it was nothing less than mind-blowing. The viewers went nuts. Comments were flying in like crazy. People were asking who this guy even was. Was he insane? Had he for real already killed 100 zombies? How was that even possible? Just then, a giant blood-covered zombie appeared in front of Jihan. It was huge and disgusting, and it groaned as it lurched at him. But Jihan, instead of being scared, just smirked. He was already prepared. Nobody knew it, but he'd already set up a domain in that exact spot, an invisible field where he had total control. To Jihan, the setup had been totally worth it. The space around him started to ripple. The sounds got all muffled. This wasn't some basic skill. It was a space domination technique, a show of pure power. A domain you couldn't see, but its control was absolute. Anyone who walked into this zone would find their movements totally restricted, their own choices overridden. Inside this space, Jihan was the master and everyone else was basically a puppet. Most people didn't even know this kind of power existed. It wasn't flashy. It didn't glow or anything, but it was deadly and Jihan knew exactly how to use it. Baron, a super strong but kinda sloppy warrior, had always picked Jihan as his sparring partner. Even though Baron's raw power was insane, he had terrible control. Jihan, on the other hand, he'd learned to handle that insane force like he totally got its vibe. After all that hardcore training, Jihan basically owned the force itself. Now he was this one-of-a-kind dude, rocking both god tier and magic powers with insane fighting skills and the secrets of the force unlocked. And get this, he was still technically a bronze leaguer. Totally hyped by the domain's energy, Jihan went back on the attack. His sword was just slicing through zombies like a machine. The system alerts were popping off like crazy. Out of 1,000 zombies, Jihan had already taken out 124. He stopped for a sec, checking out the rest of the horde. He remembered failing to clear all 1,000 last time, but now feeling this surge of power, it felt totally possible. No wait, it was a sure thing. Then the system dropped his next mission. Jihan gripped his sword tighter and the whole battlefield started to shake. He wasn't gonna fail this time. Jihan just picked up the pace, every swing of his sword getting sharper, faster, and more on point. His vibe was unstoppable, like he was a literal storm ripping through the fight. You could hear him over all the noise, basically telling the undead to bring it on, laughing at how many there were. He was yelling for more, daring the zombies to swarm him. He wasn't even slowing down. Dude was actually speeding up with every move. His body and his sword were in perfect sync, just carving through an endless wave of enemies. He was a total wrecking machine, moving with crazy skill and focus. Blood was flying everywhere in this gnarly dance as bodies piled up. The zombies just kept coming all mindless rage, but Jihan didn't even look tired. And his aura? It was getting more intense, more legit with every second. Up on the castle walls, BJ was just staring, totally floored, watching Jihan shred through wave after wave of zombies. He was speaking super slow like he was in shock. What he was seeing was just unreal, completely blowing his mind. Next to him, Massa just gave a stiff nod, looking just as blown away. Even for a guy who'd seen a ton of fights, this was next-level stuff. It wasn't just some player holding on. Jihan was absolutely owning the battlefield like a war god just dropped into this cursed place. Meanwhile, the live stream chat was going absolutely nuts. People were losing their minds, spamming jokes and hype in equal measure. They were all like, see, Jihan wasn't just talking big. His confidence was totally backed up. He was proving it every single second. Some people in the chat started rallying the troops, telling everyone to smash that subscribe button. 200,000 subs was like right there. Jihan's performance turned the stream into a must-see event. Nobody wanted to miss a second. BJ, still staring with huge eyes, admitted to the stream that he was seriously curious. Like Jihan's power level was just insane now. What were his stats? What kind of system screen could even handle a performance like this? As the camera zoomed back in on the fight, more comments from viewers flooded the chat. Some were LOLing, clowning on the defeated Gangnam Troll captains who got totally owned. But others started focusing on something sketchy. Kim Joo-hook, the mage, had been way too quiet. Him being MIA during all this chaos felt super weird. The chat started getting sus. Someone popped up like, yo, why is that jerk Joo-hook so quiet? And then more people piled on. They all started asking BJ to put the camera on the mage. The comments had this tense vibe, like people were curious but also kind of worried. BJ turned, feeling the mood change. He looked over his shoulder and called out to Joo-hook, telling him the viewers were asking for him. They wanted to see what was up. Joo-hook turned around super slowly. His face was all twisted. He was smiling, but it was not a good look. It was seriously dark, creepy, and totally unhinged. Without saying a thing, he lifted his hand, and this heavy, sketchy pressure filled the air. A huge burst of fire mana just exploded around him, swirling like crazy, like he was about to do something majorly bad. BJ jumped back, totally freaked out, his voice all confused. He was like, Joo-hook, what are you doing? But Joo-hook completely ignored him. Instead, he zeroed in on Jihan and let out this bitter, totally hateful laugh. His voice just climbed, full of poison and pure fury. He screamed Jihan's name and then just absolutely tore into him with some seriously vile trash talk. You could hear the major hater vibe in his voice as he dissed Jihan for getting all the attention for being this person everyone looked up to. The insults just got worse. Then he threw out this accusation, calling Jihan some low-life creep who was getting with his own niece. His words just got nastier and more toxic. He started questioning how Jihan had messed with her head, how he'd gaslit her into trusting him so completely. His voice was cracking like he was going totally insane, just screaming his rage. The stream chat blew up. Viewers were completely horrified. So many comments were just pure anger, saying that this psycho had just dragged Sia into it. He had crossed a major line you just don't cross. What he said wasn't just wrong. It was straight up lies, disgusting, and totally out of pocket. But Joo-hook wasn't done yet. His eyes were literally glowing with pure hate. He was like, maybe Jihan didn't even mess with her head. Maybe it was worse. Maybe he was just too nice, too sweet, too kind. And that's how he got her to trust him. His accusations got all twisted again, these dark, gross thoughts just spilling out of him. He demanded to know what Jihan had done to make her so ride or die. Like what went down between them? He was accusing both of them, Jihan and Sia. He asked what they'd done together, his tone full of nasty suggestions and zero proof. And right then, Jihan literally froze solid. His whole vibe shifted, his face went dark, and everything got dead silent. He slowly turned to Joo-hook, and dude, no words were needed. His glare alone was enough to just crush the whole mood. A death stare sharper than any blade was locked on the mage. The air around Jihan felt super thick, like you couldn't breathe, and it was buzzing with pure rage. See, Juke was on a 55,000 GP bounty mission with one single goal: wreck the crystal and stop Seong Jihan from snagging first place. The gig was given to Kim Yuk all because the Sword King clan had some serious beef with Jihan. All their hate for Jihan finally boiled over into this mission, their ultimate payback. The reward, if you cashed it out, was a whopping 55 million won, which was way more than enough to get Joo-hook's ambitions fired up again. It was like a shot of pure courage, pushing him to crawl back out of whatever hole he'd been hiding in. Seong Jihan had already pieced it all together. He knew the signs. If some dude who's been laying low suddenly starts acting reckless, it's gotta be one of two things. Either he's got someone powerful in his corner, or someone's totally hyping him up from the sidelines. Jihan wasn't even fazed by the trash talk. He'd dealt with way worse. But hearing someone talk smack about Sia, that crossed a line he would never ever let slide. The moment he jumped back in time to see Sia again, the memories came rushing back. Totally unwelcome, totally haunting. The past he wanted to forget clawed its way back into his head. The nightmares were playing on a loop in his mind. Sia's last moments in that other timeline. Her face all wrapped in bandages, scarred up from the Sword King clan's brutal beatdown. When he held her, she was already cold. There was no warmth left. And just like that, he lost her. He couldn't do a single thing that mattered. So right then, Jihan made a vow. He promised himself that a tragedy like that would never happen again, that he'd protect her no matter the cost, and that no one would ever hurt her again. Back in the present, a crazy powerful aura just erupted from Jihan's body, radiating this super intense energy. The people watching the live stream went absolutely wild in the chat. They saw it too. Jihan was officially pissed off. The comments just proved how shook everyone was. Seong Jihan was livid. His aura was crackling like a storm. The second Ju Hyuk dissed his family, it was game over. The viewers were all spamming for Jihan to just wreck him. Some were even getting worried. He looked like he was about to go way past his limit. Inside Jihan's head, a cold rage was setting in. He made a silent promise. He was about to make everyone remember what happens to anyone who dares to mess with Sia. In the time since he got his powers, Jihan had leveled up his understanding of what he could do. While he was trying to sync up the 3-key center, he'd found a secret. He could now basically copy the move known as the Nameless Divine Arts. And even though he hadn't hit martial power level 30 yet, so it was just a knockoff version, he could still feel it. When he merged all 3-key centers into one, the feeling was undeniable. It was just like the first time he'd ever used the Nameless Divine Arts, channeling. That energy, Jihan unleashed lightning from the soles of his feet, basically turning himself into a human lightning bolt. His move Heaven's Lightning Step was like a strike from the gods, footwork so fast it could punch through the sky. As he popped, the skill Electric Blast shot out everywhere, instantly vaporizing tons of zombies in his path. The whole battlefield was lit up by his personal storm, a seriously epic display of power and fury. Elsewhere, someone in the chat was frantically DMing Ju Hyuk. They were telling him to destroy the crystal like right now. Seong Jihan was on his way. They couldn't risk waiting. Ju Hyuk just let out this twisted laugh. He felt amazing, so satisfied after spewing all that hate at Jihan. He saw the message and just smirked, but then BJ tried to stop him. His voice cut through, trying to get everyone to chill out. Ju Hyuk's response was to attack him, his eyes looking totally crazed. He yelled at BJ to stop being so annoying. If BJ got in his way again, he swore he'd light him up. But BJ stood his ground, pulling out his sword just in time to block the hit. His voice got super serious as he looked at the stream, calling out to everyone watching. He told everyone that if they wanted him and Jihan to survive this, they needed to smash that like and subscribe. The viewers' chat absolutely exploded with laughter. Even in this mess, BJ was plugging his channel. Then with a nasty smirk, Mage Ju Hyuk stepped up, his voice all cold and final. He announced it was time to end this. Without even hesitating, he launched a massive fire mana attack, aiming it straight for the crystal ball to finish the mission and ruin Jihan's shot at first place. But just before the fireball could land, Masid jumped in with perfect timing. He launched his football like a guided missile. It zipped through the air and slammed into the fire mana midair, knocking the attack away. The explosion just fizzled out into nothing. The crystal was completely untouched. Viewers watching the stream went ballistic with excitement. Comments were flying, some hyping up Masid's insane reflexes, others calling the move absolutely legendary. So many people were just spamming his name in awe. He did the impossible again. Some viewers couldn't even process what they just saw, a football blocking a magic attack. It was ridiculous, but you couldn't deny it. The whole stream had just witnessed something that shouldn't be real, and they couldn't help but cheer. But not everyone was hyped. The user who had ordered Ju Hyuk to wreck the crystal and take out Jihan was totally fuming. His message popped up in the chat and he was totally losing it. He called Masid some choice names, blaming him for wrecking their whole plan. Another viewer jumped in, joking about the familiar vibe they were getting. It smells ancient, they typed, basically hinting that the legendary Sword Clan was about to make a comeback. Ju Hyuk, totally ticked off, whipped around to face Masid. His voice was dripping with sarcasm, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He was all, "What do you think you're doing, you soccer-obsessed fool?" But Masid just stood there, completely unfazed. He spoke like he meant every word. He said he never messes around when it comes to games. Games have rules, and those rules are everything. Winning by cheating isn't a real win. He wasn't just going to sit back and watch someone trash the integrity of the game. On top of that, Ju Hyuk had dissed his own teammate, the guy who literally carried him, and Mauricia went after their family. For Masid, that was a line you just don't cross. Bad people doing bad things. He couldn't just let that slide. Not this time. Ju Hyuk's rage totally exploded. He yelled, super frustrated, asking why Masid was even getting involved. But before he could say more, this insane power just washed over the field. A heavy-duty presence appeared behind him, radiating pure justice, and it was just a lot. Jihan had arrived. The streamer watching went nuts. He pointed it out for everyone. Jihan had just dropped into the battlefield, all thanks to the hype from the viewers. The chat blew up. People were cheering, some even calling him Golden Light. His arrival completely changed the vibe in the arena. Everyone could feel it. The real fight was about to go down. Jihan had a total poker face, but his eyes told the whole story. His anger was simmering right under the surface. He locked his gaze on Ju Hyuk, and it was ice cold and sharp. Everything went dead silent. Then Jihan spoke. His voice was calm but full of rage, and it cut right through the air. Ju Hyuk had messed up big time, and there was no going back. Fear hit Ju-hook like a truck. His mind started spiraling. He seriously couldn't believe this was happening. Jihan's presence was just crushing him, leaving zero room to even think about fighting back. He cursed under his breath, trying to come up with anything to say. Maybe if he could get one last diss in, he could feel like he won even just a little. But Jihan wasn't having it. Mana flared up around his body and clamped right over Ju-hook's mouth, shutting him up completely. Not a word, not even a whimper. Jihan stepped closer. He told Ju-hook that when they first met, he'd wanted to just end him right then and there, blow his head clean off and call it a day. But now he'd changed his mind. Getting offed was way too easy. Inside the battlefield, pain gets nerfed. Dying is just a level drop. That's it. No real consequences. That's the only world Ju-hook knew. But Jihan had leveled up beyond all that. He was in a whole new zone with a new set of rules, and he was about to drag Ju-hook right into it. Ju-hook's mind was racing. He thought to himself, what an idiot. Like, why wait? Why not just finish him? He'd already lost everything anyway. His skills, his pride, the reward. Still, if he made Jihan this asterisk mad, then maybe in some twisted way that was a W. Jihan put his hand on Ju-hook's shoulder. The pressure that came next wasn't physical. It was spiritual. It was pure soul-crushing pain aimed right at his core. Ju-hook started shaking uncontrollably. His whole body trembled as this insane force pinned him down. He couldn't scream, but you could see the agony all over his face. Jihan stood over him like some kind of final boss. Totally calm and in control, he reminded Ju-hook that this wasn't even the real punishment. This was just the warm-up.